and welcome to the virtual meeting of Charles County Board of Education. Today is December the 8th, 2020. Mr. Schwartz, we'd like to go into closed session.
Yes, we need a motion for the board to meet in executive session as permitted by the Maryland Open Meetings Act, Section 3-305 and 3-103 of the General Provisions article to discuss personnel matters concerning the superintendent's recommendations on certificated positions, negotiations concerning setting parameters for negotiations with EACC and ASME, legal advice concerning charter schools, and administrative function matters also concerning charter schools, and also concerning seating allocations, negotiations with the county concerning seating allocations, and the reopening plan timeline. Is there anything else to add to that motion?
I do not have anything else. Anyone else? Okay, I need a motion.
We need a motion.
So moved.
Okay, I need a second.
Second.
And moved by Mr. Hancock and seconded by Mrs. Abel to go into closed session. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, and no one opposed. I don't see Mr. Lucas. Mr. Lucas, give me a thank you so much. Sorry. Okay, the motion carries and we will move to executive session. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the December 8th, 2020 virtual meeting of the Charles County Board of Education. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it
stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. We'll begin today with correspondence from Dr. Hill.
Good afternoon, everyone. Last month, CCPS paused the move to phase 2 of our reopening plan due to an increase in COVID-19 cases in our community. We said that we would pause phase 2 until at least December 22nd, 2020. That date is fast approaching, and I want to give our staff and our community an update about the possibility of moving into phase 2 in January. We have tentatively established January 25th, 2021 as the new target date for bringing special populations of students back to in-person instruction. In this model, teachers and staff will report back to their school buildings on January 19th, 2021 to prepare for the return of small groups. We will continue to monitor the data, collaborate with the Charles County Department of Health, and consult with board members prior to finalizing any of these decisions. It is important to note that even though the community spread of the virus has increased, we have not seen an increase in the spread of COVID-19 in our schools. CCPS has had over 600 students in student learning centers since late August. We have also had hundreds of teachers and staff members reporting to work in their buildings. And although some staff have contracted the virus, contact tracing has shown that the virus did not originate in our schools. Contact tracing has shown that interactions in the community and in large family gatherings, they have been the source of most of the cases among our staff members and in our community. The only way to get schools open and get our lives back to normal is for all of us to follow public health guidelines. Please wear your mask, distance yourself from others, and wash your hands frequently. Since closing schools last March, the Food and Nutrition Services staff has prepared and distributed meals for our students. We have 17 school distribution sites and 3 mobile sites in the Waldorf area, and we are looking for more ways to feed more children. Starting in mid-January, CCPS will begin handing out meals at several bus stops based on community interest. Last week, we sent a survey to parents to determine where to locate those meal distribution bus stops. Parents, please answer the survey that was emailed to you or respond to the survey, which is posted on our ccboe.com website under the What's New tab. We have fresh, nutritious food to serve, and we hope that you will take advantage of these meals for your children. The commissioners recently held a work session to discuss possible changes to the school seat allocation policy that will directly impact classroom size and overcrowding in our schools. As we have said many times, CCPS is not against development. We understand that development is necessary and can lead to many positive outcomes for our county. What needs to be made clear is that along with development comes the need for new schools. CCPS loves to build new schools, and we're good at it. Our highly skilled staff in the Office of Planning and Construction are ready to lead the construction of new schools to meet the needs of development in our community. The challenge comes with how do we fund this new construction? A typical elementary school in today's dollars costs about $32 million. A middle school, about $60 million, and a high school, almost $100 million. State funding is not going to keep up with the pace of growth currently being contemplated by our county leaders. We strongly encourage them to develop local funding plans devoted to building schools so that together we can meet the needs of the families that choose to come to our county. The Transportation Department has temporarily suspended middle school redistricting committee meetings until our COVID-19 numbers improve. While the suspension will delay the board's decision, we still expect to finish the process early enough to provide ample notification to the public of zoning changes for middle school students. There was a discussion during the board's recent legislative meeting with the Southern Maryland delegation about the value of the School Resource Officer program in public schools. CCPS strongly supports keeping SROs in our schools. SROs interact with our students daily to build positive relationships. Additionally, they provide immediate help in an emergency and serve as a deterrent to school safety threats. We will continue to support efforts to keep the SRO program in our schools. CCPS has received its first charter school application. Over the past several months, the staff has been reviewing the application, and I will present recommendations to the board during your January work session. Community members can find out more information about the charter school application process on our website at ccpoe.com under the Community tab. Congratulations to its academics teams from North Point and La Plata High Schools for placing first and second in Charles County's regional competition. The North Point team will compete against Centerville and Poolesville High Schools in a regional match set to tape at NBC4 next weekend. NBC4 will air that match on February 27th. Good luck to all of our teams. Finally, the holiday season is a time when we reflect on the many things for which we are thankful. I'm thankful for the continued generosity of our staff, students, and community. Charles County Public Schools staff has continued to give to those in need, and I'm grateful that the COVID-19 pandemic has not stopped us from spreading hope. Our school bus contractors and local churches came through once again this school year to donate new coats for both children and adults. Together, we provided nearly 800 coats to families during a recent drive-through pickup. And our pupil personnel workers continue to deliver clothing, food, and coats to students in need. Just before Thanksgiving, schools and administrative offices collected food and donated more than 4,000 food items to replenish the Lifestyles food pantry. What impresses me most is the CCPS culture of supporting our children and our community. The pandemic has disrupted our lives as individuals, as families, and as a community. However, even in difficult times, it's easy to find good news about our community and how they continue to practice gratitude and kindness, not only during the holiday season, but throughout the year. I wish all of you a peaceful and joyful holiday season and appreciate your continued support of teaching and learning in Charles County Public Schools.
And we will entertain correspondence from our board members. I'm going to just go across my screen and call on you. If you have something to add, please feel so welcome to do so. I'll start with Ms. Battle Lockhart. You have something you'd like to share?
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to say today, happy holidays to everyone. Since we won't see each other after this, maybe see it in the community. But I just want to say I appreciate all the hard work that everyone has put in. Today, I wore my butterfly for a reason, for us to remember those that have lost loved ones, even around the screen, and understand how valuable our family members are in how valuable we are to each other. So I just wanted to let you guys know that how much I appreciate what you do, what you bring to the table, but most of all that the blessing that you are still here with us today. So I just want you guys to take advantage of the time that you're going to go out for the holidays and really understand the value of the time that we've been given. So I wish you all the best, and I know this has been quite a journey for us all as teachers, staff, students. We're all trying to figure this thing out to try to make sure everybody stays safe, including ourselves. So I honor your work. I'm grateful for you to still be here with us to continue to do the work. And we are so excited and can't wait to the day that we get all our kids back into the building. So I wish you happy holidays to you and your families, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Ms. Battle Lockhart. Ms. Brown, would you like to add anything?
Can you hear me? Okay. I'd like to thank all of the school personnel that have really worked hard trying to make this happen. I know I've been doing virtual learning with my granddaughter, and I really appreciate all the hard work that her teacher has put into making this new way of learning happen. I'm especially pleased with Mr. Andrews and Mr. Heim for all of their hard work with the school allocations. And would just like to tell everybody to get a restful holiday season and wear your mask, please.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hancock, do you have anything you'd like to add? I see you next.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. Reiterate on what Ms. Brown said. I want to thank the teachers, parents, and the students for this. It's been a heck of a year, and we've really made a lot of progress. As a father that witnesses it every day, it's come a long way with virtual learning, and it's become a very pleasant experience for my children. But for some people, it's not, and I just want to thank everyone for their patience and for going along with us. I want to thank, I hadn't had a chance to do so. I want to thank, I know they're going to be around till the summer. I want to thank Dr. Hill, Ms. Holstein for their service. It's greatly appreciated. It's been a pleasure to work with you both. I also want to thank Commissioners Rucci and Bowling for allowing me the time to chat with them on the phone in regards to school allocation processes. And don't know where it's all going to wind up at in the end, but they have been receptive to my comments, and I thank them for listening and providing their feedback with me. This is something I want to bring up. We all attended the legislative breakfast, and most of that was a pleasant experience, but part of it was not. I'd like to apologize to our staff, especially Ms. Kathy Kiesling, for some of the remarks made by one of our elected officials in regards to the presentation that was made about school resource officers. And it's sad that some of our elected officials treat us as a whole that way, and it's not just once or twice, but every time we meet, this particular elected official shows a severe lack of civility with us, and we got to figure out what we're going to do moving forward. But I do want to apologize to our staff who put a lot of work into that presentation. And regardless of what anybody says, it was a very good presentation. Aside from that, I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a very happy holiday season. Thank you.
Ms. Abel, would you got anything you'd like to add at this time?
I too would just like to wish everyone happy holidays and thank you to all of our staff for everything that they've been doing to make sure our smallest citizens receive an education safely. I would also like to say I had a committee meeting for the MABE Budget Committee recently, so that budget has been submitted to the MABE Board of Directors for approval, and we should know about that in February. Also want to touch on school allocations. Please reach out to your commissioners, reach out to any of your board members if you need information before weighing in on the topic, but please let your voice be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Abel. Oh, good, Mr. Lucas, you joined us. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. So just to echo what everyone else said, I just like to thank staff for all the hard work. I've been tutoring some folks when I can, and it is difficult. And I know we all want the kids back at school as quickly as possible, but we need to do it safely. With regard to the allocations and the process with the commissioners, as I've always said, we can handle growth, but we just need funding. And it's something that in the past has not come through as promised. I understand that that's not on this particular board of commissioners, but we need to have a commitment that we're going to fund education at the level that it deserves and respects. And even before COVID and even before expected growth that will come as a result of any changes to the APFO, we have been receiving less money than we historically did 20 years ago as a percentage of complete county budget. And I think we need to realize everything that is placed on the school system that may not have to do directly with education, but feeding kids, clothing kids, ensuring for their mental health. Okay, that's all fallen on the school system, and we need to have funds to do that. So I just like our commissioners and our public to understand that, and as others have said, please reach out to your elected officials to make sure that the funding of education remains a top priority. So thank you very much, and happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas. Ms. Wilson.
'Tis season, happy holidays to eat. Can you hear me? Season's greetings to everyone. I am thankful for each and every educator in Charles County Public Schools. A big hug, virtual hug, goes out to each and every one of you under these virtual circumstances. And we are thankful for all of your hard work under COVID conditions. There is an old saying that says the show must go on. And I bring that up because there are two Charles County Public High Schools, Henry E. Lackey and La Plata, and they are actually hosting virtual plays. One, in fact, is December the 11th. That is Lackey High School. But you must email Austin Gore in order to get access. And additionally, for the other play, you need to email and get submit a request to get access. There is a press release that is published on the Charles County website that gives you that information. For security reasons, unless I get a nod up and down, there's an email in which you can request access. We need to continue as much as we possibly can to support the arts in Charles County Public Schools. And I also want to remind and remind everyone about the CTE application process. It is very much open. We are having to make accommodations virtually. And recently, the Charles County Public website put on information for all of our CTE programs. So just because we're doing things virtually doesn't mean the show doesn't go on. So be mindful of that. And I would just ask that you support our arts. I would also echo the sentiment of my colleague, David Hancock, to Dr. Hill and to Deputy Superintendent Holstein. Congratulations on your decisions to go forward and enter the retirement world. We still have a lot more time to spend with you, but publicly I wanted to give a heartfelt thanks to your dedication and commitment to education. As it pertains to the legislative breakfast, which is often a great opportunity for us as Board of Educators to collaborate with our legislators. This year was certainly different. There is an adage that I always like to say to people, and that is, speak in such a way that people listen, and listen in such a way that people want to speak. I want to thank Commissioner Bowling and Commissioner Stewart, and specifically Delegate C.T. Wilson, because they did just that. They expressed their concerns and recommendations in such a collaborative way that we want to do things that lead to productive outcomes. And what I want to say to the Charles County Public staff, you did exactly what we asked you to do, is to give a presentation of topics that was of interest or in priority for us to share with our state legislators. I would encourage the public to go back because the staff put a lot of work in this presentation, and there was important information that was provided in these briefings to include COVID funding, to include information on SROs. The whole point is we have to collaborate, but we have to collaborate so that leads to a productive outcome. And we welcome that opportunity. But I wanted to say the staff, despite some of the discouraging remarks, we will continue to keep it professional, and we're going to continue to move forward. And so I don't want your hard work to go unnoticed. As it pertains to the school allocation policy, I would encourage the public, especially now, to pay close attention. Even today, the county commissioners today are receiving a presentation from the town of La Plata with their proposals of how they're going to grow the town of La Plata. We need to weigh in this situation very carefully. The consequences needs to be considered very carefully. And most importantly, if it is the will of the leadership of both the town of La Plata and the county commissioners to grow this county, so be it. But do not leave the Charles County Public Schools system behind. If you're committed to high quality education, that means you're committed to finding the funding that is not only appropriate for the additional construction based on the numbers that are projected, but you're also committed to the programs and services that our students need to thrive. I would say to every parent, to every guardian, to every grandparent, I know that the season of greetings is upon us, but there are two important policy issues that are heavily being weighed, and they are the school allocation policy. The other thing that is being proposed is the school resource officers. I will tell you that there is a few delegation members that want to make significant changes. The degree of those changes, we don't know, and we have to wait and see. But you as parents and guardians, you can certainly contact your elected officials and tell them how important you feel school resource officers are. So I would encourage you to do that. I look forward to 2021, and I look forward to a productive and collaborative effort by all of us to make Charles County Public Schools even better. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. And finally, I have a few comments to add. I'd like to first begin by offering my congratulations to the administrators, staff, and students and parents of Dr. Mudd Elementary School for their school being named a National ESEA Distinguished School. Only 2 schools in the entire state are awarded this honor, and we're thrilled that Dr. Mudd is one of them. I think it's significant to note that Dr. Mudd School is being recognized for closing the achievement gap. So that's quite an accomplishment. I'd also like to thank Kristen Shields for her leadership as the director of Title I programs throughout this process. I attended the Maryland Association of School Boards Board of Directors meeting this past week. We reviewed May's legislative positions for the coming legislative session. We looked at the strategic plan for the association, and we discussed plans to create an equity handbook that will be used for local boards if they so choose. I'd like to remind the community that the majority of your school board members serve on one or more state level committees, as well as performing their local duties. So please know that Charles County members are working for you, not just at the local level, but at the state level as well. I would like to say thank you to our staff for their presentations that were made at the annual legislative meeting. We appreciate your efforts to inform our local delegation about the concerns that we have regarding legislation that affect our schools that will be coming up during this next legislative session. Students, I want to remind you, open season for scholarships, so make sure you get in those applications. The website should be up and running within the next few days if it's not up already. Congratulations to our students that participated in It's Academic. We're very proud of your participation, and we wish our North Point students well in the next competition. And finally, I'm sure that our public is aware that Dr. Hill has announced her retirement effective July the 1st. She's been an unwavering advocate for our students, and we're very grateful to her for her dedication to teaching and learning for children here in Charles County. Thank you, Dr. Hill, for your service. The board will be sharing information in the coming weeks regarding the process for selecting a new superintendent. And I also want to express my thanks to our Deputy Superintendent, Amy Holstein, who has also announced her retirement. Amy has had an outstanding career here in Charles County as a teacher, administrator, and deputy superintendent. Her expertise in instruction is unmatched, and we will sorely miss you. We thank you for your service and your dedication as well. Wish you the best in the next chapter of your life. And lastly, I just want to say my heartfelt best wishes to everyone, to all of our students and all of our staff and community members for a peaceful holiday season. Please take time to relax and regroup from the events of this past year. We certainly all do deserve it. Thank you. Are there any committee reports? I know that thank you to Mrs. Abel for reporting on the budget committee. Anyone else? And also I want to say thank you to our school allocations subcommittee for all the work that they are doing and continue to do on our behalf throughout this whole process. Next, we will hear some comments now from Linda McLaughlin, President of the Education Association of Charles County.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Linda McLaughlin, and I am the president of the Education Association of Charles County. On November 17th, EACC's Early Career Educator team created history by hosting the first ever Southern Maryland Regional Early Career Educator Meetup. Early career educators from Charles, St. Mary's, and Calvert counties came together on Zoom to network, explore union resources, troubleshoot common concerns, discuss observations and evaluations during distance learning, review classroom management strategies, brainstorm self-care options, and share technology tips for programs like Sway and OneNote that can be used to enliven the virtual classroom. It was an out-of-the-box thinking, community-building, innovative, and transformative evening. This is the type of collaborative structure that will support and retain our new educators, and our ECE team is determined to be part of that charge. Huge thanks to our ECE leaders, Melissa Carpenter, Chelsea Short, Julian Scrivens, Marissa Baker, Malin Redmond, Michelle Darty, and Kiana Williams. In addition, our EACC Instruction and Professional Development Committee is producing short instructional videos to help educators with technology. They are posted on Facebook weekly as part of our EACC Tech Tip Tuesdays, and the first one is on how to create a Sway presentation created by our awesome committee chair, Heather Hartman-Jansen. They are also posted on our EACC website. The EACC AFSCME Ice Cream Social on November 23rd was a huge success. The event celebrated both American Education Week and Education Support Professionals Day. Thank you to Sarah Birch and AFSCME for working with us at EACC to make this event happen. We had a total of 135 EACC and AFSCME members attend to get their to-go sweet treat. FY22 negotiations will soon begin. EACC is looking forward to meeting with the CCPS bargaining team to begin the negotiations process. The EACC sent out a survey to our members to inform our bargaining team's work when crafting our proposals. We had 1,065 responses. Let me say that number one more time, 1,065 responses, which is almost 52% of our membership. That's pretty amazing. The EACC CCPS Joint Committee on Extra Pay for Extra Duty has also been meeting, and those results will be included in the FY22 bargaining team proposals. On January 6th, EACC will be holding our virtual legislative reception on Zoom. Discussions will be held in breakout rooms. Topics to be covered include, but are not limited to, the override of the veto of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, COVID relief funding, virtual learning, equity, prioritizing the health and safety of staff and students as we move throughout the stages of this pandemic, and racial and social justice issues that permeate our community and our schools. You all should have received an invitation via email, and I look forward to your RSVPs and seeing you there virtually. As COVID numbers rise and the holidays approach, please stay safe, wear your masks, practice social distancing, and keep yourselves and your loved ones safe. I wish the happiest of holiday seasons to you all, and I look forward to 2021 as a productive, fresh start for us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is Mrs. Sarah Birch, President of American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. Ms. Birch?
My name is Sarah Birch, President. Changes this.
Ms. Birch, we can't hear you. Ms. Birch, could you speak louder, please? Okay, sorry.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, ma'am.
Council 67 representative resigned. There is a representative. Her name is Abena McAllister. I have not met her yet. Plan to do that this week. The office in Walton at number 2 Post Office Road be open for use 2 days a week. Local 29-8 held a virtual meeting. Some of the items brought up were creating a website, social media page, so members can get in touch with the executive board if questions arise. Answer any email sent to me, but these are more up-to-date methods of communication. I would like to have them set up by next month. Another topic that was brought up in the meeting was the MAG survey. I am proposing a letter to members to explain the reason for the survey. The importance of the survey is monumental, covering pay grades, job descriptions, salaries, comparison, different salaries, and employees are always talking about their duties. Now they can put it in writing. This survey has the potential to be the most important information gathered by Charles County Education. After some serious discussions, ASME had some fun at the December 1st meeting. Prizes were drawn, and the local 2980 executive every holidays. It is amazing how flexible the support staff of Charles County Board of Education has been during this trying time of COVID-19. Of course, food and nutrition services comes to mind. Nutrition did not get 3.5 off. Ever since March 19th, they have worked. Hats off to food and nutrition. Keep up good work. All personnel should take a bow. Sure hands, stay 6 feet apart, wear a mask, and have a safe holiday. Yes, thank you, Dr. Bill.
Thank you, Mrs. Birch. Next on our agenda is an update from our student board member, Mr. Hurd. Mr. Hurd, we can't hear you. No.
What about now? Okay, I see all the head nods.
Now, thank you.
Thank you and good afternoon. At our last board meeting, Tanae Kidd, Jason Wu, and I had the pleasure of presenting a student member voting rights proposal to this board. We thank you for the time you gave us and your consideration of our proposal. As a result of the board meeting, it was decided that more discussion was needed and a work session was held on November 23rd to further discuss the student member voting rights proposal. At the meeting, the student member on the Montgomery County Board of Education, Nick Asante, the student member on the Anne Arundel County Board of Education, Drake Smith, and I had the privilege of further elaborating on the proposal and explaining why student representation is so vital to our decision-making process. We were disappointed that the board chose to vote against student member voting rights, but we still thank board members who gave constructive criticism. However, I feel obligated as the student representative on this board to call into question some of the rhetoric that was used during the work session. During discussion on the proposal, leadership of this board stated that students are a special interest group. Students are the reason this institution exists. I know as a student, if I were to ask nearly any of my teachers why they teach, it wouldn't be the salary, it wouldn't be the summers off, it would be the students they wake up every morning to see. I was taken aback when I heard those remarks, and I know I speak for our students when I ask that this board reevaluate the role they believe students fill in this institution and who our deliberative process is meant to serve. As our community moves forward and progresses towards the end of 2020, one thing is clear. Our school resource officer program is going to remain a central point of discussion. 2 months ago, a presentation was delivered to this board detailing our SRO program. It was asked what the student perspective was, and I stated the student community is yearning for a forum, an opportunity to share their experiences with you. I am still hopeful that this board will consider hosting a public forum regarding our SRO program to allow for the meaningful discussion this topic deserves. Students are eager to be welcomed into the discussion as stakeholders and are more than ready to provide personal testimony for this board to evaluate. I am also excited to inform this board and our community that students will be hosting a forum to discuss our school resource officer program on December 9th at 5 p.m. I encourage board members and all interested community members to attend. The meeting information is available at events.ccboesmob.com. events.ccboesmob.com. This will be my last report in 2020. I hope that our staff and students have a cheerful holiday break, a safe and exciting New Year's, and come back with a renewed spirit. We made it to the end of 2020. And with that in mind, our administrators, teachers, support staff, and all CCPS employees deserve an enormous thanks and appreciation for their relentless service to teaching and learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. Next on our agenda is a report from Deputy Superintendent Amy Holstein.
There we go. Mr. Graves, can you put the first PowerPoint up, please? Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Okay. Before we look at the first slide, I'd just like to open this morning or this afternoon with a few comments. Now that we have really reached the end of the first quarter, it's concluded, we have so many stories of success by both our teachers and our students, as shared by our board members today, and some of the successes that their own children and grandchildren are experiencing in virtual learning. But we would be remiss not to say that there are also students and families and teachers that are struggling as a result of virtual learning. They're struggling academically, and they're struggling with mental health concerns. Looking at the first quarter, we see that we are experiencing mental health issues with our students, and we're seeing a striking drop in academic performance. This pandemic is driving an equity gap in American education. Reports every day on the news are sharing systems across the nation are grappling with the same issues that we are, an increase for one in failing grades. In preparing for today's report, I did a lot of research and seeing just how systems, very large systems, small systems across the country have a shared theme. States such as New Mexico and Texas have 40% of students failing at least one class. I live in Fairfax, and they just did a comprehensive report to families on the number of students that were not finding success in the virtual setting. And our own Southern Maryland partners, Calvert and St. Mary's, are experiencing this same degree of concern for our students. Mr. Graves, would you go to the first slide after this intro, please? I asked George Sims to put together some data for the community and the board to look at. The first slide is a summary of the grade distribution for our middle school and high school students. We look at this data very carefully at the end of each quarter. On this slide, you can see the number of students, how many A's that were awarded, how many B's, and so on. And then you can also see the number of D's and F's and I's that were awarded in the first quarter. Next slide, please. This slide, however, the data on this slide is alarming. If we look at last year's number of failures compared to this year's, in high school, we've seen a 72.7% increase in the number of F's that were awarded for the first quarter. In middle school, we saw a 72.9 increase in the number of Fs that were given first quarter. Also, I asked Mr. Sims to look at the high school students to take a little deeper dive and to look at those Fs and what the percentages were for the students that were earning Fs in classes, across the curriculum. And this data is also very alarming. Fs below 50 were below 40 were 69.4%. That's alarming. Because what that says is that we all know that mathematically, students that earn an F, if the F is too low of a percentage, there is no mathematical way for them to pass this class. And when that happens, no matter what we try to do, students lose hope. So, next slide, please, Kyle. So we are respectfully asking you to please consider suspending the first quarter grading policy to give grace and to give hope to students during this unprecedented time in education. We do believe, though, that we should give traditional grades. Many counties, many states in my research have reverted back to pass-fail. And we believe that our students deserve better. Our teachers are working so hard and our students have overcome so much that we do not recommend going back to a pass-fail like we were in the spring. We think that we should stick with traditional grades. And by doing so, there will be no effect on college admission, dual enrollment, or issues of lack of accountability. The only thing that we're asking the board to consider today is allowing a student who earned an F to get that F, but to have that F mean a 50% percentile in the first quarter. Along with the hope that we do this for our students, we also have to partner that with what are we going to do next? We are in a different position than we were in August and September. So along with this hope, we're going to ramp up our outreach efforts to students. And we are certainly hoping that we can safely bring back our most struggling students in late January so that we can provide in-person instruction to them. But in addition to all of that, we are in a better place. I think Mr. Hancock said things keep getting better, and they do. Our teachers are amazing. They have learned so much in such a short amount of time. And the resilience of our students, it's unmatched. So second quarter, what's different? I put on the slide, let's just keep calm and embrace technology. We have now families who didn't have first quarter hotspots. So under Ms. Thompson's leadership, 1,599 hotspots have been issued. We've given out almost 20,000 devices since March. We've expanded our internet cafes to include Lackey, Higdon, Mount Hope, TC Martin, and our learning support rooms starting yesterday have been expanded to include students who do not have reliable internet. So as of yesterday, we have 24 middle school students and 44 high school students transported with our buses to the learning support rooms. Next slide, please. As far as instruction goes, Ms. McLaughlin mentioned so many of our initiatives, and the EACC has been a fantastic partner to help us provide the professional development that our teachers need. We also have the Wednesday asynchronous day that has a focus on helping teachers identify critical content, because instruction in a virtual setting takes longer than in a traditional setting. We have to identify the critical content because we cannot teach everything in the curriculum in this virtual setting. Teachers now have the ability to start class when they want This has optimized teaching and learning time and helped us with our breakout rooms. I can now say that interventions are fully in place. They were not in September. Our Dropbox and our submission of assignments has improved, although not where we want it to be. And our grade and credit recovery programs are expanding. We're also starting a new program at the end of the week where we're going to, we've created a new evening high school model, and we're looking at 70 of our most struggling seniors to help them in this virtual setting with extra support and mentoring. If not, we are going to have a significant crisis when it comes to the amount of students walking across that stage on graduation day. Next slide. With all of that being said, and I certainly am always the optimist, and I'm just so proud to work for this county and the work that we've done. There still are challenges out there for parents. I talk to them every day, and I know that you receive emails and phone calls as well. We have caregivers who really are having difficulty supporting their students. And I hear from parents who have 3 and 4 children that are trying to juggle 4 different schedules and support their students and help them to be successful. It is a challenge for many of our families. And then we have, I just talked to a parent today, frustration with missing work. Students feel they submitted it, but the teacher doesn't have it. And so we continue to have that challenge with our Dropbox and understanding where these assignments are lost somewhere out there in the cyber world. But it's causing frustration for students because some of them just want to give up because they're doing the work, but it's not being counted and giving credit. So that's a challenge for us. Parents say, you're giving us too many emails. We want you to communicate, but we are overwhelmed. And then the one I hear the most is the workload increase, that some students are just not seeing an end, and the tunnel is becoming longer and longer because the workload is increasing on them. And we have very well-intentioned teachers trying to close this achievement gap, but the workload is something that continues to be a difficulty that we need to address. And then also the multiple platforms that I hear from parents. My child just got this under their belt, and now you've introduced something else. So some of these challenges, we will keep getting better. Some of them are the result of closing schools and trying to get a virtual learning platform up as quickly as we did in this new setting where fear is also part of the equation. So with all that being said, we absolutely cannot forget that COVID is taking a toll on the mental health of our students. We're hearing significant concerns, not only with students that have struggled in the past, but we have a whole new group of students that have always excelled, and they're experiencing stress for the first time in their academic career. Some straight A students that are now getting grades that they are not comfortable with, but don't know how to improve. We're hearing from those parents. So we cannot forget that instruction and academics are important, but we have to take care of our kids as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Kiesling so that she can just share some of what she's seeing in student services when it comes to the mental health and stress on our students right now.
Good afternoon, everybody. Kyle, can you just flip to the next slide? And before we go to the next one, I'm just going to read a little bit about some information from research studies that explains how trauma affects a child's brain. And then I'm going to move into some of the challenges that we're finding with some of the trauma that our children are experiencing. During normative early adolescent development, the prefrontal cortex undergoes maturational shifts in cognitive and emotional functioning, including increased impulse control and affect regulation. However, these developmental tasks can be negatively affected by chronic exposure to traumatic events. Stressful situations often evoke a fear response, which inhibits executive functioning and commonly results in a fight, flight, freeze reaction. If a student does not possess strong anxiety management skills to cope with reminders of the trauma, the student is prone further anxiety, emotional dysregulation, lowered frustration tolerance, and increased behavioral problems and depressive symptoms. So Kyle, if you could flip to the next slide, please. Increased trauma is something that we are seeing in many of our students and their families, and communities just in general are showing how the stress of this COVID shutdown has increased in intensity, the frequency and duration. It's causing many of us to feel uncomfortable, and children sometimes can't express those feelings and aren't being able to let us know how they're feeling. We just know that through some of their actions and sometimes their sliding grades, that these things that are bulleted here could be causing this to happen because they are stressed. The increased isolation alone isn't just affecting kids, it's affecting all of us, and we know that daily. We know that the children sometimes have parents who have to work, and so there's reduced supervision in the home, and many times they are not actively engaging in what they should be doing when they're supposed to be learning and on the computer. We also know that there's a decreased involvement with the pro-social school staff members and peers that they're used to seeing on a daily basis. When we have them in front of us physically, we're able to see them, speak to them, reach them, hear and assess how they're doing. And I'm going to show you later on in some slides how that has decreased dramatically because we don't have the children in front of us. We also know that through there's increased feelings of resentment due to societal and educational inequities. And all of this brings about stress to all of us and to our students. And it is a fact that a stressed brain cannot learn like an unstressed brain. Next slide, please. We also know that there have been academic challenges, and this also brings about stress to our students, staff, and to our parents. Technology for supports for students and teachers. We have worked really hard. We're getting better at it. We have held some nights where or some days where we've had actual parents and students come in so that we could support them in person, but we still have these challenges going on. We still have students who are disconnected. We've made adjustments for teaching staff. They have made adjustments in instruction and engagement expectations. And of course, there's those challenges to the normal school expectations in a virtual setting where attendance, participation, grades, behavior, remaining equitable, all of those things are challenges that we've had to look at, try to face and change. There is nothing normal about what is going on in this new normal. Next slide. So, as we started talking about the slip in grades, it came to our attention that non-traditional instruction was happening, and this should not equate to traditional grading practices. With the stress, the limited access to resources, abnormal instruction, each of these things bring a question as to why we would continue with traditional grading in the way that we're doing it right now. And so with that, talking about how traumatic life is for our students right now, we really hope that you would consider the actual floor of 50% for our students, for those that are failing their classes. Next slide. This is the data that I was telling you about. This shows you the risk and threat assessments that we have done from last year, September through November, and this year, and the differences of those that we have done for the year. In September of last year, we had 140 risk and threat assessments, and those are broken down in the chart below. This year in September, we had 11. In October, there were 202. This year in October, we had 8. Last year in November, we had 170. This year total, we had 12. And this is because our staff is not able at all times to have the children in front of us so that we can recognize some of the behavioral changes or some of the just appearance changes that would maybe lead them to offer a referral up to a psychologist or a school counselor. And we are asking, next slide, please. Before we get to that, the Department of Social Services, we keep track of any child protective service referrals that we are receiving. And we are over 100 short this year compared to the same time last year. Again, these are referrals that are made by our staff when they see concerns or they hear concerns that should be reported. And again, not having the students in front of us, this is a real big concern for us in student services and for the system. Next slide. So we really want to let parents know that we are here. And if they have any concerns about the mental health of their student, to reach out to their school counselor, pupil personnel worker, or school psychologist. We're here to help and support through all of this. And we understand these are unprecedented times, but that's what we do. And we want to make sure that everybody is aware that the help is available if they need it. Last slide, please. So what we ask of everybody is to adapt to the changes by acknowledging that we have the challenge in front of us, to continue to make the improvements that we need to support our students, to recognize that the effects of the pandemic is so severe that we need to keep it in our forefront of our minds so that we are doing everything we can to give the support. Always express sympathy or empathy and understanding. Empathy and understanding teach resiliency to our students, and also extend grace and forgiveness when we can. And that would be it for me. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Kiesling. So in conclusion, we really are asking you, our board, to make a decision today to acknowledge that we need a pathway for these students. We need to keep getting better with the challenges that we have, but in order to give these students hope with everything going on in their life and the mental health challenges that Ms. Kiesling talked about, and the academic challenges and the family challenges and the health concerns that many of our families are experiencing, please suspend that grading policy so that we can give them the grace of a 50. And we will work with their families to show them the path of how to graduate or how to pass that class for this year. If not, I am very fearful that students are just going to stop logging in and we're going to lose them. And we know we all want kids back in school. And we understand everyone's concerned about doing it safely. But the longer that we are out of school, the bigger this challenge is. Even though we as educators and parents and students are getting better, the longer we're out, the bigger the equity gap will be. So for this first quarter, we ask you to please consider suspending that grading policy. Students will still earn an F. It will just be a 50 F to give them some hope. Any questions?
Thank you, Mrs. Holstein and Ms. Kiesling. Questions or comments from our group? Mr. Lucas?
Actually, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I think Miss Battle Lockhart had her hand up first, so if she wants to go ahead, it's fine.
Oh, go right ahead, Ms. Battle Lockhart.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I have a question in regards to, we, in our legislative breakfast, we talked about, the the CARES Act tutoring grant. So talk to me about, like, were any of these students that are having those challenges, were they provided the service or?
Absolutely. We provided the service to every student, and we are at the point now where we overspent the grant. So we have spent every single dollar on meeting every need that a parent came forward with tutoring. I will say, though, that it's not too early for us to realize that this summer we are going to need a very aggressive summer program, because no matter, whatever we put in place going forward, we need to have a summer program to close some of those gaps, especially for our youngest learners. I am so worried about our kindergarten and first graders who have that challenge of learning to read. Can you imagine learning to read over the computer? Our elementary teacher staff here, though, they're doing such a great job. We offered a workshop for parents, and I was overwhelmed by this response, because so many of our families are really out there with us and helping their children to learn that absolutely critical life skill. So, Ms. Battle Lockhart, thank you for the question. I'm praying that we get more CARES funding, because I will tell you that we need it, and not one dime went to anything but tutoring.
So what, did it go to certain grade levels?
No.
It
No.
was,
What we used it for is we used it for the summer program for elementary, where we brought in students that were the most struggling. And then in the secondary schools, we offered it to every family. And what we used, our home and hospital office, Brooke Cohorse took the lead, and she coordinated hiring the tutors and setting up the tutoring sessions with every family that asked.
So the tutoring is the failing grades for happening to the students that was in the tutoring program, or these are students that were not in the tutoring program?
Both.
Both.
Both. I mean, we have some disconnected families that, unfortunately, because they're not in our buildings, don't take advantage of everything that we have to offer. We know that. So it's a combination of both. We saw many, many requests for tutoring, specifically in math. Because of those prerequisite skills, it's very difficult for students because of the lapse in spring when we didn't have a very rigorous program. We were doing our best, but that caused some lack of understanding moving into the next higher level math class. So that really was the biggest concern from families, was in math. So it's a combination of both.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lucas?
Sure. Thank you, Ms. McCraw. To follow up on that, you mentioned that there was an equity gap. And so do you see a specific group? Like, where is that trend? Where is it most persistent?
So what we're looking at right now is, number one, the disconnected students, our homeless population. They are struggling immensely. But we're also starting to see a pretty big gap when it comes to EL students. special education students. They are having difficulty learning in this environment. And I almost see a little bit of what the health officials talk about fatigue, that everyone was really trying and, all gung-ho, but kids are getting tired. And we have students in our special needs programs that need more than a computer screen. And they need life skills, and we can't give them to them right now, although we're doing our best. But I am very concerned about our special education students, our EL students, their families are struggling, and our disconnected students.
So is it a combination of all those students that are contributing to the increase in receiving Fs and very low Fs? And also, where does the student population without access to internet, where do they weigh in that?
So those students who did not get a hotspot or a device till the very end of the quarter, we allowed principals to give them an incomplete because it was not fair to give them a 0 because it was not their fault that they could not log on because they didn't have access. So you'll see those numbers. It's very small, and that's because of the dedication of our staff who made phone call after phone call, who delivered all of these devices, all the outreach we did, the PPWs. That number is small because of those folks. And then I know that everyone knows this, but I'll say it again. Charmaine Thompson was just unbelievable. And she did everything from calling vendors every day, begging them to fulfill our order. So those kids who really just got nothing the first quarter, they received I's on their report card. And those are the students that we brought into school yesterday, if their parents permitted it.
So that was actually my next question. Can you describe the learning support rooms and who's in those?
So what we did is we took all of the students who received I's, personally called them, offered them bus transportation to come into our learning support room so they at least have access. We started with middle school and high school. Yesterday, I told Dr. Hill this morning that I almost got teary-eyed seeing a school bus with children on it. And they came off the bus with their backpacks and their masks, but they were in school. So we have about 70 students right now that are taking advantage of coming in. Unfortunately, there is no direct instruction in person for those students. We are giving them access, and then they are logging on and getting instruction from their regular teachers. But we're also providing them 2 meals a day, which is also something that we can't forget.
Sure. And thank you very much for those words. I'd mentioned at the last meeting that kids without internet access are personally who I thought should come back. And you said there were 70 kids. Was that right?
That's about right.
And I don't have the chart in front of me, but I think when we did the survey, when we were going to attempt to roll out phase 2 in its entirety, I think there was about 300 kids total that wanted to come back that didn't have internet access. Is that correct?
That's true, but because we now received all the hotspots and the devices, that number decreased because they have access now.
Perfect. Well,
and Mr. Lucas, I have to tell you that your idea at the last board meeting sparked this idea. So we appreciate that, to at least offer learning support rooms to our children who just they don't have the ability to log on.
I'd just like to thank you and your staff. It's not an easy situation, and I firmly believe that all kids and their parents want their kids to learn, and we just need to put the resources to use where it makes sense. And it sounds like this is a perfect example of that. But thank you again.
You're welcome.
Mr. Hancock?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. Thank you, Ms. Holstein, for the presentation. I'm just going to ask a few questions that I know the answer to, but also just to reiterate them so the public knows exactly what's being proposed. I also want to thank you for, as Mr. Lucas touched on, allowing not only just giving us a proposal to alter a grade, but also looking for solutions and implementing those solutions. And I know I talked to Mr. Lucas at our last meeting, and I thought his proposal was a good idea, and it's good to see that idea spark this to allow transportation for students who really need the technology and the meals as well. So just to be clear, what's being asked of us is for the first quarter only at this point. And during that first quarter, anyone that has received below a 50 will receive a 50. It's still a failing grade. We're still using a traditional grading system, and that's all that's being asked of us, correct?
Yeah, Mr. Hancock, that's a good summary. That is all we're asking, and you bring up a very good point, because just suspending this policy and giving students a 50 is not going to solve the problem. We have to look at what we can do now to add more support so that we're not in a worse situation at the end of the second quarter.
Thank you. And I think it is a good idea. And just to let people know, in the past, for completely different reasons, I have advocated against something similar to this, but under completely different circumstances. Of course, we have students now that a lot of this is no fault of their own. They can't control the situations around them. So I am looking at this completely different. Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I would like to ask our student board member his thoughts on this, being as he is a student who really excels. I would like to know his how Mr. Hurd feels about this.
Certainly, Mr. Hurd.
Yeah, I think this proposal is a necessity, and I think we have an obligation as a board to make decisions with compassion. And I'm glad that staff have brought forward a position for us to vote on that's not only compassionate, but rational and reasonable. This isn't an extreme, and I feel like it's only going to benefit everyone involved, and that no one's going to be getting the short end of the stick or being put at a disservice. And I think especially by keeping the traditional grading system, we're encouraging teachers to continue what they're doing, but we're also not going to punish students throughout their entire year. As Ms. Holstein was saying, this can negatively prevent them from passing that class for the rest of the year. We are going to allow them essentially future opportunities to fix that. And I think we can all agree that although we're confident with where first quarter stands now and where the future stands now, we all know that at the beginning there was turbulence. And I think we can't fault any student for that. And that, like I said earlier, this is a compassionate move that's needed.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Holstein.
Sure.
Thanks, Mr. Hancock.
I would just like to thank my colleagues for their excellent clarifying questions and comments thus far. Just to be thinking ahead, though, it's almost interim time. Do you have any data yet as to what the trend is regarding failures for the second quarter?
So
interim information?
I don't have numbers yet, but I talk to principals every single week because we have a weekly principals meeting. And they have written in their plans for their goals for the year to address the number of students that were failing and to put extra supports in place. So looking at their plans this week, I know that we will see better success in the second quarter than we did in the first quarter. And just by having access and the hotspots, and now everyone having the laptop that they need, that right there is going to solve a lot of the problem. But I am worried about certain groups of students that have language barriers, that have special needs, that until we get them back in the building, that this is going to be a challenge. But I'm hopeful with everything that we have in place that second quarter is going to look better. I want to reiterate, though, to our parents, if you're seeing that your children are not behaving like they normally do and they are very stressed, please reach out to the school or reach out to us. Last week, we had a case of a straight A student who was contemplating suicide because they were getting D's. And the family reached out to us, and we've provided the support to that family. We cannot lose children over stress, over grades. So please watch your children and make sure that you're reaching out to us. We have lots of help if we know.
I just want to add as well, thank you very much for the very comprehensive presentation, because I think it brings to mind for all of us the balance between the grades and mental health. And I think we're aware of it, but we need to be reminded of it. And one thing that you didn't say during your presentation that struck a chord with me is that we need to give children hope. We don't want to lose any of our children because they had a not very successful first quarter. I personally think that this would give students hope to continue to strive to get better and improve their grades. So thank you once again.
Thank you, Ms. McGraw.
Are there any other comments? Mr. Hurd and then Ms. Wilson.
Thank you. Throughout both the grading presentation, but also, the dual mental health part of the presentation, there was references to boundaries and workload. So my question would just be, what boundaries are being put in place? Because like you say, and like we've mentioned in past board meetings, teachers want to do the right thing, but sometimes that outlet is done in the wrong ways, and it negatively affects students. So what ways are we being proactive about setting those boundaries?
So the best way that we know of right now is to continue with extensive training for our teachers. And that happens every Wednesday because of the schedule that we have with asynchronous learning. We're able to do that. But I want to make sure that our community knows that if your child is having a significant problem in one of their classes, they need to reach out to the teacher first and talk about it. I talked to a mom today that the problem is already solved because we scheduled a parent conference. Let the teacher know that there's a significant difficulty there with workload. And then if it's not solved at that level, reach out to administrators. Principals and vice principals are key to helping students make sure that they're successful. So we can't just say this is the way it is. I think at this point, we all know that workload is an issue. We need to really start working at the teacher level and address the specific concerns that a family is having. The other piece is I'm working with all of our principals right now, and they're writing recommendations that we do have a homework policy, but we're looking at providing some additional guidance because in this virtual setting, that policy is not working as well as we need it to. So we're going to look at making recommendations, and also a reminder to all of our teachers. Wednesday is a catch-up day. That's how it was designed. There should not be any new learning assigned on Wednesdays. And I'm hearing from families that Wednesday is becoming the most difficult day of the week for students. So we will keep working on our side to make this better so that students aren't just completely overwhelmed where they're shutting down.
Ms. McGraw? Can I further comment on that?
Right ahead, Mr. Hurd.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so you mentioned the boundaries, and I'm glad to hear that there's teacher workshops and there's opportunities for students to reach out. But I know personally in my classes and many other students' classes, I've heard that Wednesdays are definitely not a catch-up day. And I know personally, tomorrow, Wednesday, I'm not going to be catching up on my work. I'm going to be doing my Wednesday work assignments. And so, and that's not just one teacher. It's not an outlier. That's the vast majority of my teachers. And I'm seeing the liaisons nodding their heads in agreement. So I really hope that something is proactively done about that, so that way it's not taking students having to accelerate this and bring it to the attention of a principal or administrator, you know, where disciplinary action or remedial action is being taken against these teachers. I think it just needs to be understood. So I hope that that's addressed.
We hear you, Ian. We all will keep working with our schools to make this happen, because that's how it was designed. And I hear you. I hear it from others all the time, that Wednesdays is not how we designed it to be. So we will keep working. I promise you that.
Okay. Did I see Ms. Wilson's hand?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you
And
hear
then
me?
Ms. Walker?
I just wanted
Yes. And then
to
Ms.
go
Walker.
back to the summer program consideration. And of course, that's going to take funding of some degree. And I would be very interested to hear as you solidify the plan and associated costs. I hope Linda McLaughlin is on the call, because she extended an invitation for the next legislative breakfast or luncheon, and this is certainly something to illustrate to our legislators why we need funding, because COVID recovery is going to be of utmost importance. I mean, the learning consequences is going to be significant, and we need to have a plan in place going forward. And so I'm sure, Dr. Hill, you and your staff are going to keep us posted of the plan, but most importantly, we have to take advantage of when we have an opportunity, if our legislators are willing to listen, that these are things that we need to be conscious of going forward into the future, as well as considerations for our teachers and helping them recover from COVID. Because it's a lot to process. The other point that I wanted to make, and I know the staff will keep us posted, is our high school seniors, and just keeping us informed as far as everyone meeting their requirements and being on time with graduation requirements. You covered quite a bit of resources and support opportunities, but particularly our high school seniors, we need to kind of really stay on top of making sure that we don't lower the standard, but we certainly make sure, given COVID conditions, that is followed. And not to put you on the spot, but I'm imagining that the high school senior class is around 2,000 seniors. So it would be nice to kind of to center in on those that are facing many challenges, and also offer to the parents that if you feel like you're not getting that support, that who to call to help your students succeed. I think it can't be emphasized enough.
So the high school seniors are one of our top priorities. We know exactly in each school which seniors right now are not on track to graduate. We're assigning them mentors, we're assigning them additional support. But as you say, Ms. Wilson, we also need the students because, it is going to take them work to pass. And unfortunately, you can't graduate if you're not willing to put the work in. So although we're offering all of these supports and all of these programs, and we realize this is unprecedented time in education, we need our students to show up too. So we can't have kids logging in for 5 minutes and then jumping off. We need that commitment from kids. We'll be there with you. We'll walk with you, but you have to walk with us. We need attendance to improve. Kids need to be logging in and participating. We need those cameras on. So it's very hard to teach, and it's very hard to have this kind of conversation when I can't see you. So you bring up a good point that we have a lot in place, but walk with us. We can't walk you across the stage unless you're willing to do the work.
Thank you. Ms. Walker, I saw your hand. You're muted.
Is this working? Okay. I wanted to comment on the Wednesday work, which Ian kind of summarized my ideas about that. Some of my teachers since the beginning of the school year have felt obligated to give work on Wednesday. So they told me since the beginning, they were like, well, we have to give you work. And so every Wednesday, my teachers, all of them would email me and they would say, here's your assignment for today. It is due by tonight. And so Wednesdays became harder than the days you had to go to school because you got more work and you have to do it all on your own. And also, I would like to make a comment on the workload because the workload has increased immensely this year. But I also think it's very hard to cut back on the workload because we spend so many less hours with our teacher. The teachers are trying to find new ways for us to learn content. And so I think that to some degree, it is to the benefit of the student to have more work, especially in like advanced placement courses, because that test, the curriculum for the test is moving way faster than we can in virtual school. And so I think the workload is trying to compensate for what little time we now have in the classroom.
Your points are so well taken, Christina, because our AP courses are moving at such a quick pace. And if we want students to pass that AP exam, that is going to be a challenge. And you're right. In a virtual setting, you are seeing your teachers less. So there has to be some increase in workload. We just can't make it so overwhelming that students can't complete the work because they also need to eat and sleep and have some time away from school so that they're healthy. But I'm going to clarify again that for Wednesday to count as a school day, it has to be an asynchronous day. So students have to be working, but what they should be doing is they should be finishing up work from Monday and Tuesday or working on a long-term project. There is no expectation that for it to count as a school day, that a teacher needs to make a new assignment. So I will reiterate it again today in my update that will go to all teachers. Okay, and hopefully that'll help.
Thank you very much. We're going to revisit, well, actually during new business today, we'll be taking a vote. So thank you all very much for your comments and questions. We're going to take a 10-minute break right now. Don't log off, just turn off your video, please, and get something to drink, and we'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
How you doing, Carl? Al Graves, how you doing, my friend? Can you hear me? Yeah. All right, perfect.
Okay, we got Liz. We got Liz up here twice.
Now you're looking good, Liz. Are we back on the air, Carl? Oh, good. Then I'll have a bite of my toast.
Mute yourself.
Mute yourself. We don't want to hear you sipping and crunching.
Exactly.
I do apologize. I'm sorry. It's the first time I've worn this headset.
Nice and crunchy and slurpy.
If you're hungry, you're hungry.
All right, I see Miss Abel 1. I see Miss Locker 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we're good to go. Okay. Sure. All righty, thank you so much and welcome back. At this time, we are ready for a report from Nikki Majors, who is our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. Mr. Majors.
Good afternoon, all. So while Mr. Graves puts up our presentation, I'd like to say hello to Chairwoman McGraw, board members, Superintendent Kimberly Hill, and our viewing public. My colleagues, Mr. Brian Johnson, HR Specialist, and Mr. Jeremy Campbell, also an HR Specialist, appreciate the opportunity to come before you today to provide a retention update. Like most school districts in the U.S., Charles County Public Schools struggles to not only hire teachers, but to retain them. And you've heard us talk about in the past the teacher shortage. It is real, it is large, and it continues to grow. You already know that schools have a dwindling pool of applicants to fill vacancies. And you already know that the number of education degrees that are awarded to graduates or people actually completing a teacher preparation program, it continues to decline. You may be aware that we have a harder time retaining our credentialed teachers, particularly those who are newer to the profession, and many who leave us are often certified and they are experienced teachers. Why does all of this matter? It matters because a teacher shortage harms our students, and staff instability that results from turnover, it adversely affects the public education system as a whole. So what can we do about it? We need to address the factors that prompt teachers to quit, such as working conditions. We've all heard about low pay, challenging school environments. Sometimes it might be weak professional development programming. Other times it's recognition. Whatever the reason, let's take a look at what's happening nationally and then specifically in Charles County. Mr. Johnson.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the members of the HR team who contributed to this presentation. Ms. Vita Gray, Ms. Diana Colombo, Mr. Jeremy Campbell, Ms. Kathy Bryant, Mr. David Shimizu, Mr. Kevin Howard. I would also like to thank Ms. Jen Kondo for starting this process a few years ago. For a number of years, enrollment in teacher education programs across the country have been decreasing. We're also finding that the number of individuals who are going into the field of education are exiting the profession within their first 5 years. Next slide, please. When you look at teacher education programs all over the country, you'll notice that enrollment has been on a decline for a number of years, going back all the way back to 2010. Next slide. What's more discouraging is the number of students that are actually completing the teacher education program. So you may have a lot of them that are enrolled, but a larger number of them are actually completing the program. And this is countrywide. When you look at the teaching profession, a recent survey has shown that parents are not encouraging their children to go into the field of education, citing that there are more active or more attractive professions like medicine, law, and computer science. Next.
And some of the national indicators for through some of the surveys that we've done, the reasons why teachers are leaving the profession, increased workloads, classroom environment, lack of respect from some of the community members and or parents. And a lot of them also feel about that the students with testing and the high demands with high stake testings along with student behavior.
Next slide.
Next slide.
Some of the common things with the shortages in the state of Maryland, as you know, we are an import state, meaning most of our teachers come from out of state, as the state of Maryland does not have enough teacher colleges in the state of Maryland. One of our main recruiting backgrounds, if you will, is Pennsylvania and most of the East Coast, and we go as far out as Wisconsin and Minnesota. Some of the rates from teacher burnout, as you can see, basically data shows 40–50% of teachers leaving the profession in that first 5 years, which is obviously when they're trying to figure out what's best for them as far as their career path. Next slide, please. Some of the critical shortage areas in the state of Maryland, it used to only be certain positions, being math, special ed, and the sciences, but now the state of Maryland has deemed every teaching position as a critical shortage area, as all positions are critical to the success of our students. Next slide here. Obviously, all 24 counties are enduring this shortage as well. We're still looking for increasing our minority teacher candidates, males, and some of our typical really hard to fill positions are media specialists, school psychologists, and SLPs. Next slide.
So now we'll take a look at some of the separation data for the past few years. You'll notice a trend of increases in separations from 2015 to 2017 up to 2018. In 2018-19 school year, that was the year where we had a salary increase for our Unit 1, for our EAC Unit 1 teachers, and our salaries became comparable to the surrounding school districts. Of course, 1920, this past school year, we had a drop in separations. We contribute that to the COVID pandemic, but we also want to make certain that everyone understands that this data comes from July 1 of that school year through June 30th of the following year. And also to let you know that majority of our vacancies or majority of our separations happen in June of that year.
And this is teacher data.
This is teacher data. This only includes classroom teacher data.
And this is retirements, resignations, and terminations.
Next slide. And like I said, majority of our resignations happened in June of that school year, which affects the following school year. And the teachers tend to make their resignations effective June 30th to honor their contracts. You will notice that in June of 2017, that is on a decrease, but these are resignations, retirements, and terminations. And we wanted to make sure that we pinpoint that these are when we received most of our resignations for this year. Next school year. Next slide. So we want to give you the top 5 reasons why teachers depart Charles County Public Schools. Next slide. And this is June of 2017, with the top reasons for that teachers have indicated that they were leaving Charles County Public Schools, with relocation, teaching in non-LEA, retirement, certification non-compliance, and teaching in another state. The majority of those that are leaving for relocation or non-LEA, sponsor another non-LEA, are going into one of the 3 surrounding school districts, whether it be Calvert, St. Mary's, or Prince George's County. Next slide. 2018, you'll see that the top 2 once again are teaching in another Maryland LEA and relocation, and then teaching in another state. During 2018, we've noticed that a lot of teachers, majority of those teachers will be returning to Pennsylvania, because Pennsylvania started to open up more, even though we recruit a lot of teachers from Pennsylvania. A lot of those teachers were returning back to that state because they had more vacancies.
Next slide.
Next slide. And the same thing, same top 2, teaching in another non-LEA, relocation, certification non-compliance, teaching in another state, and working in other businesses for 2019. Next slide. In 2020, relocation, teaching in another non-LEA, they remained the top 2, and teaching in another state. Like so, we saw far less separations from school districts for this year, due mainly for the pandemic. Next slide.
So one of the things we implemented in the Office of Human Resources was an exit interview. I will be transparent and say when I started in 2017 in the fall, I was really surprised to learn that CCPS did not extend the opportunity to employees who were exiting the organization for various reasons an opportunity to share their employee experience. That is unusual, and it's not a best practice. So what we did was we implemented an initiative and formed an ad hoc committee to come together starting in early 2018 to form an exit interview process. We created a standard operating procedures document. We drafted an exit interview form, and together at that time with the job placement and retention manager, Ms. Jane Kondo, who did a lot of work on this initiative with the ad hoc committee, we started implementing and holding and conducting exit interviews. And in fact, I did some of them myself with departing teachers. And it's always ideal to hold an exit interview in person and ask a consistent set of questions, because you see common themes that start to bubble up around reasons why people most often are leaving. You see things around administration concerns. You see things around, as Mr. Campbell pointed out, classroom management, lesson planning, the struggles that new teachers face when they transition to a new job for the first time, a career job, or come from a different area with a different set of demographics, and culturally they have to assimilate and get up to speed and running and launch successfully. So we implemented an exit interview process, and one of the things that we decided to do was to disclose to that exiting personnel member that it's a confidential conversation, but we are going to share it with your permission, what you tell us. And what we started to do was provide that exit form to the principal, to the superintendent, the deputy superintendent, and at the time, the director of special education, because there was quite a bit of feedback we were receiving anecdotally around that area. We quickly learned, as you saw on the bar charts, in June, we could not manage the volume of departees and trying to do in-person exits. So we spent that fall transitioning our in-person exit process to an electronic exit survey. So now, and that continues today, when someone's exiting the organization, we send them an email and we invite them to provide us with feedback about their employee experience. And we also, they have the option to still talk with an in-person HR representative if they would like to have their exit interview conducted in person. So that's where we are today. We do still have an exit interview process. We still collect information about the employee experience, but it's most often done electronically. And it takes a departee about 15 minutes to complete that form. It just depends on how much they have to say. Next slide, please.
Some of the new challenges for teachers who are just starting out is, of course, they went through student teaching and they had that mentor teacher there. When that mentor teacher is not there anymore, obviously classroom management is a concern for new teachers. Some of the feedback that we received, obviously planning for lessons and or the grade book. And then also working with students with special needs. Some of the programs do a better job than others preparing our teachers for working with students with special needs. Obviously, where to access the curriculum, what materials to do. There's a lot that's thrown at new teachers from day one. So these are just some of the current challenges that new teachers face. Next slide, please.
And we wanted to provide you some of the comments from some of the exit interviews that were conducted. But we just noticed that there was a common theme of those individuals that were leaving the county said that they felt like they were unwelcome and unsupported. So these are some of the comments that we wanted to point out for those individuals that were conducted during the exit interview. Next slide.
Thank you.
Some of our schools that are doing an excellent job of recruiting and maintaining their teachers. We interviewed some of the principals, and this is some of the feedback that we received. Some of the schools immediately call the teachers upon acceptance of the job and start that relationship right away. They oftentimes partner them up with team leaders to kind of get them going, saying, hey, you have questions. If I'm not available, here's your team lead. Here's your co-teacher that you're going to be working with. Invite the staff, the new teacher to the building. Oftentimes they arrange it over lunch. They start to include them on emails and frequently check in as if they're already part of the team, especially if it's in the spring and they graduate in May. There's still a month or so left of school for us, and so obviously starting to get those teachers in. One of the newest things we have to do is obviously with teachers being virtual, is also recognizing them. One of the schools does a Superstar Virtual Teacher Recognition Award where parents can email into the principal, let them know that some of the teachers are doing a good job. So it's just these small little bits of recognition that really kind of stand out and kind of draw the teachers in and make them feel home and part of the school community. Next slide.
So in terms of looking at trends, we need to continue to figure out and dissect why teachers are leaving us and where they're going. And when we see turnover at specific schools, we need to understand why. Some schools are better at retaining their teachers, to be honest, than others, and board members present and past have heard about that through communications that you receive via email. But the bottom line is, what is leadership doing about it? And I'm happy to say that when Ms. Kondo and I 2 years ago started communicating exit data to the superintendent, deputy superintendent, I was happy to see changes being implemented. For example, Mrs. Holstein took that data and built into her professional development monthly training sessions with principals, retention activities and initiatives, so that it stayed top of mind and administrators were taking seriously the fact that you really need to recruit your employees on a daily basis if you expect for them to stay. And I know that there are a lot of supports that are in place through our instructional office, such as, all first and second year teachers receiving a mentor or having a weekly mentoring meeting with someone who's assigned by the school system who can provide that person with non-evaluated feedback and support. And some schools provide, you know, a first-year teacher with a school-based mentor in addition to that mentor that's assigned by the school system on a weekly basis. And that's very helpful as new teachers are making that transition and looking to launch successfully. I think we have talked about focus groups, particularly with second and third year, because as Mr. Johnson said earlier, the data shows that most of our exiting instructional professionals do so. They leave the organization between their first and fifth year. And when you look historically back, you know, over recent years, that data holds true. So it's important to have conversations with these individuals to figure out, you know, why are you turning over, or why did you decide to stay with us? What's keeping you here? And taking a look at the climate surveys, those are done on an annual basis, and action plans are developed. But how are those action plans being implemented, and who's being held accountable for them? So leadership really looking at the data that's coming to their attention about retention is important, so that we have a school system-wide initiative focused on this area, as well as school-based retention initiatives. The things that we do, while we have successful strategies in place, they really need to be made more systematic so that it strengthens our system as a whole. Again, there are a lot of school administrators who are performing initiatives on the ground, like conducting their own surveys and focus groups, but we really need to have an umbrella initiative where it's being monitored and someone's really focused on this on a full-time basis, because the fewer folks that we lose, the less that we have to go out and recruit. And when you have a teacher shortage and you know that the supply of talent is low, you want to hold on to the people that you have. And also looking at growing our own, which we'll talk about in the next slide.
So these are some of the recommendations. Just wanted to highlight that we can continue to consider. We want to continue to minimize the administrative changes throughout the buildings, but also develop a district-wide retention initiative. Ms. Holstein is has implemented a lot of initiatives that to help our teachers and also the administrators to make certain that we retain our teachers in our classrooms and in all of our buildings. We also want to continue to enhance the current mentoring program. One of the first questions that we get when we go out to recruit, they ask about the mentoring program. So we want to make certain that we continue to enhance the current mentoring program and also continue to enhance our principal training. I know that Dr. Golden, also Ms. Holstein, also trains our principals, and they meet with them on a weekly basis to make certain that they are ahead of the curve and make certain that they know what they need to do to retain our teachers. And also, we would like to help develop an alternative certification program. So like Grow Your Own, to fill those hard to fill vacancies. We know that there are individuals that are currently in the system that have degrees, but they don't have an education degree. So we're going to want to look at those individuals and see what we can do to help cultivate them to become teachers in Charles County, because we know if we cultivate them, they'll ultimately stay.
And I'd just like to add here that one of the things I have seen the superintendent implement in the time that I've been here is, as we've shared information about the employee experience as it relates to leadership, she has been very cognizant of taking that information in and looking at the attributes that we look for in administration principals, vice principals, and applying it, again, listening to the voice of those who are exiting and those who have not had the best experiences, really carefully looking at what we really look for in the way of a good fit and strong leadership when we look at administrative changes. And I just want to personally thank her for inviting HR to the table in the last 2 years to be a part of that conversation, because there is a lot of information that we do collect anecdotally from our employees that sometimes doesn't bubble up to school system leadership. So I just want to thank her personally for having that opportunity, because when we make administrative changes, that impacts the school culture. You know, people do business in different ways. They communicate in various manners. So it's so critical and important to select the right leadership. Next slide.
Some recommendations to consider when brainstorming ideas to help recruit and or retain teachers. Obviously, we'd like to see some sort of signing bonus for teachers in the high critical needs area, staff-to-staff peer referral program, where our own teachers are some of our best recruiters on the ground. They're talking to other teachers in the community or out in public, and they often are able to recruit from the nearby areas. Like to focus on some possible weekly spots on teachers dedicated to successful teachers, which we do a lot of already, but also within the buildings themselves. And then one of our critical things for teachers staying, obviously, is affordability of housing. So want to start working more with some of the local property management companies to get rental assistance for teachers. There used to be several property management companies that would give, different incentives for teachers and firefighters and police. And with the way DC metro area is growing, some of those incentives have gone away. But obviously, we want to revisit that and hopefully assist us with helping to keep some of our teachers so they're not spending an entire paycheck on their rent.
And just another comment here. I understand in the past that the signing bonus for teachers has been a concern from a union standpoint, but I just like to share that there are competing districts who are offering signing bonuses to teachers, particularly in higher needs content areas such as math, for example. So it's not something that's out of the ordinary. And a paid referral program is something that is common in other industries. It may not be common in the educational setting, but we really do need to look at creative ways to attract talent. And again, the focus is once we get you here, we want you to stay. So we want to build an environment where people feel challenged, they feel appreciated, and they feel supported, and they have access to all of the quality professional development and career development opportunities that they need to advance themselves. Next slide. So as we conclude our report, I'd just like to share on behalf of my team that we really need to, again, look at what we can do to address the factors that are prompting teachers to quit. So supporting higher pay, for example, continuing with strong professional development support and recognition programming, and more and better career and leadership development opportunities so that people can advance will improve our school environments. So with that, we'll take questions. And I just also wanted to mention, there is a teacher retention and attrition dashboard that's available through the Maryland Department of Education. And it right now it's archived, but there is still access that the public can look at to see 8 years of data on attrition, teacher attrition across the state, if anyone has an interest in looking into this area further. Thank you. Any questions?
Ms. Wilson?
Ms. Wilson's hand?
Yes. Thank you for a excellent briefing. It is some of the information is worth repeating over and over and over again. And I would say to Dr. Hill and to Mrs. Majors, the Human Resource Department has made significant positive gains. And I'm saying this as someone whose parent worked for the school system. I'm saying this as a community, when serving as a community activist, and then upon the hiring of Mrs. Majors and interacting with your staff, there's major significant improvements in terms of processes, the willingness to review your policies, the self-assessments, and just overall employee relations. So I think that's worth mentioning because it's obvious the professionalism and the excitement or engagement from your staff is very it's worth mentioning, because having walked into the human resource department, say 10 years ago or 7 years ago, dealing with a loved one's retirement, in comparison to walking into your offices and the professionalism and the services that you render to the employees. There's always room for improvement, okay? But certainly you're a completely different department. I wanted to make a comment to use the state of Pennsylvania as an example, because the employment situation in Pennsylvania, when they are having employment issues, it affects surrounding states. So if a young person needs a job that has a teaching certificate and they can't get hired in Pennsylvania, guess what? They're going to leave. But when that employment situation improves and you look at the retirement and the salary of the two states, that makes it very challenging for us to compete. So when you make that statement about folks are returning, it's returning in part to salary, retirement benefits packages, etc. I would share with the public again that when afforded the opportunity to go on a recruiting fair, it's very competitive among school districts doing these recruiting fairs. I mean, there's clearly a pipeline challenge that still has not been addressed. And I think that we not only need to look at this issue not only from a retail perspective, but from a wholesale perspective. And I know when I mentioned the Thornton Commission came up with great ideas on how to improve these issues, and it ran right into the ground because of lack of funding. So now here we are with the Corwin Commission, and we're now in a holding pattern, and some of the very things that you are bringing up is embedded into the Corwin Commission, but we've got to follow through. And there are certainly things internal to Charles County Public Schools that we can do to work to make it better for the hiring and recruiting and retention, etc. But there's also things that we need to push at the legislative level that is well in reach, but we've got to make the commitment to follow up. It's worth mentioning the topic of equity and inclusion. The school system just and within the last year adopted an equity policy, an inclusion policy, and it's worth mentioning because those things matter when we recruit particularly persons of color. They want to feel like they are welcome, they are included. And so if you could go to your recommendation slide, it would be greatly appreciated. And the point that I want to go with the recommendation slide, it is now time to follow through with the recommendations. And Madam Chair, with that said, for example, if the staff could, and it's next to the last slide, if the staff would, where it says, that is, like the signing bonuses, thank you, the referral program. Let's if there's a consensus and will of the board, let's put a work group together and put together what a signing bonus program not only looks like, but what it would cost, so that we can have something substances to go forward with our elected officials, because it's going to need money. It's, you know, a paid referral program. What does that mean in terms of cost? Can we set up a work session where we have a meeting to invite our local property management companies and get this done? You have solutions, but now we need an implementation plan. And so for the last 6 years, what you have shared, I've been seeing this and hearing this, and it's time to put this into action. And I would just ask that this is something that we seriously considered. If it's something that needs to be negotiated, then let's hit it. Let's put a date on the calendar and let's get this done. Because this is not rocket science. This is something that is doable, but we need the analysis so that those that need to sign the check to make this happen understand what's the cost involved. So thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks, Mrs. Major and staff for the presentation.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson, for your comments. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Other comments? I would just like to say thank you as well to Ms. Majors and her staff for the work they've done. I appreciate the fact that your presentation was very transparent. As difficult as it was for me to read some of the comments, that exit comments that teachers made, it did make me feel that we can get some very valuable information from that and in ways to improve.
Yes, we
don't like to hear negative things, but that was reality. So we can make some changes based on, what we know that people are feeling and the reasons why that they're leaving. So
yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much for that transparent presentation.
Thank you very much, board members.
Thank you.
All right, if I see no other hands, comments, then thank you all very much. Our next report will come from Mr. Heim, Assistant Superintendent Supporting Services.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I have Steve Andrews, who's our Director of Planning and Construction, with me, who has been given a oral report on the project status update. The actual report has been loaded to Word docs. When you do take a look at the reports, as always, grouped together, the projects are grouped together by their funding source. And that first group of projects are funded through the CIP, the Capital Improvements Program, which is a cost share between the state and the local government. 65% of the funding from the state, 35% of the funding from the county government based on county wealth. On that line of thinking, last week we received notification from the IAC, the Interagency Commission on Public School Construction in Maryland, on 75% projected funding for our CIP. We had submitted over $50 million in requests to the state, and it appears that we're going to receive about $9.8 million out of that $50 million that we had requested for various projects. And again, that's falling in line with something that creates heartburn with us in Charles County, that 10-year average that the IAC talks about. So that projected $9.8 million for FY22 falls in line with that 10-year average. And it makes it difficult for us because obviously a number of those projects that we've submitted are not going to receive any funding for next year. So the projects that are going to receive funding for next year will be Benjamin Stoddard Middle School, which is obviously an ongoing project. We're in the middle of that renovation and expansion of Benjamin Stoddard Middle School. We'll also receive an additional funding for Eva Turner Elementary School, which is going to finish up this summer and will be set to reopen again next fall. So that renovation and addition will be completed. And the third project that we are set to tentatively receive funding for is Brown Elementary School. That's an open space enclosure. And what our project calls for is us to move Brown out of Brown for next school year, to move into the transition school with Eva Turner moving out. And Brown and their staff would be there for a year, and students while that open space enclosure occurs. But with that limited amount of funding that we are expected to receive from the state, a number of projects, again, will not be receiving funding moving forward for FY22, which includes the McDonough project, which was working on some security enhancements there, also reworking and expanding their fine arts program, also not receiving or expecting to receive funding for FY22 are the roof replacements at John Hanson Middle School and Westlake High School. Another disappointing part of that funding is, if it's been, we'll make that available in the future. The actual breakdown of that funding is, with Turner finishing up this summer, the state's still going to owe us money on that project. So one of the disappointing things for us, as the state continues to pay out its share, probably over the next couple of years at least, that means that's taking money away from future projects that we would like to be doing. So, which further impacts what we want to do on a local basis. So I just want to take that opportunity while we were talking about the project status, just update the board and the public what we anticipate from the state in terms of local funding for future projects and current projects. So at that point, I would turn it over to any questions you may have for Mr. Andrews and myself.
Can I make a clarification? Okay. The funding, thank you. The funding recommendations, as Mr. Heim mentioned, have been issued. They're based on 75% of what money is available for FY22. And the total number that they're showing when this is all said and done would be for the three projects totaling $9.8 million. Their initial recommendation for 75% funding levels only gives us $7.8 million. So we still have to appeal those decisions to continue to get the additional funding, but we will be appealing on Thursday for the additional projects that Mr. Heim mentioned that were not even supported, including projects like roof replacements and kindergarten additions and the major projects at McDonough, as well as major projects at T.C. Martin and the new elementary school number 23. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Next report will come from Kelly Acton, our Assistant Superintendent of Fiscal Services. Ms. Acton?
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Joining us today is also our budget manager, Sherry Fisher Davis. She's also on with us for this presentation. I'd like to start with the CARES Act funding review. We have gone over this before, but to just talk about it in this setting, it is part of the board docs. We have received $8,882,924, and even though it does show a balance on here for the ESSER grant and the GEAR grant and the broadband for unserved students, we have spent all of the funds. What's left on the GEAR grant and the ESSER grant is the equitable portion, the share for our non-public schools. So we have spent all of the funding that we have received. For the broadband for unserved students, we had purchased about 1,600 hotspot devices and 110 Wi-Fi access points. For the GEAR grant, we purchased 582 hotspot devices. For the ESSER grant, we purchased 7,155 laptops for middle school students, 2,000 headsets, and 2,000 webcams. For the tutoring grant, the question was asked earlier about that. We have spent all of those funds. We spent the funds on summer boost tutoring and after-school elementary and secondary tutoring. We also used the funds for Imagine Learning for literacy and reading licenses for all elementary schools, and for System 44 phonics intervention licenses, level literacy intervention kits for kindergarten through 5th, and Do the Math intervention kits for kindergarten through 5th. HMH math inventory diagnostic placement monitoring kits. And our technology grant, we have also spent those funds. We purchased 7,866 laptops for high school students. As mentioned before at the legislative breakfast, we did anticipate that we would receive a reopening incentive grant for $230,300. We did not receive that since we were not able to open up, but we had already spent $180,195 of that. On our ESSER reopening grant, we've purchased 2,000 XP Pen wireless graphics, drawing digital tablets and styluses, 500 tripod stands for classroom cameras, 500 keyboards with touchpads, 2,000 USB extension cables. And as we reported earlier, we have received additional CARES Coronavirus Relief Fund reimbursement from the county in the amount of $352,523. So in summary, as I mentioned, we have spent all of the funds, and we certainly could use more if there was more available, but that's where we are for now. I don't know if there's any questions on the CARES Act funding.
I see Miss Wilson's hand.
So if you were to write a letter to Santa Claus and saying, if the funding for under this additional funding that you would like to see, approximately how much would you ask Santa Claus for? Yeah, surely you have a wish list or a Christmas list. And if you don't know the answer right off the top, it would be nice to know, what are some unfunded needs or wants as they are attributed to COVID.
Sure, Sherry, we did put together a list for the county. I'm looking for that to see how much we had identified. I don't know if you recall that. We had an additional $2 million.
Yeah, it was around $2 million is what we have spent to date in the county. As Ms. Acton was saying, the county has, in essence, reimbursed us for $352,000, but there's over $2 million that we have initially spent since the onset of the pandemic.
That's good for the public to know and understand that this is the burden that's being placed on us.
One thing that I'd like to add, though, is Ms. Holstein said in her presentation, we certainly could use more funding for instruction and tutoring. I don't have that amount, but there's obviously a need, and maybe Ms. Holstein can answer that. I'm not sure.
The summer program that I mentioned is going to be very expensive. It's going to be in the hundreds of thousands because we're going to have to transport kids, or transportation is going to be a barrier. So if I were making a guesstimate, at least probably $500,000 to do it right. I would also like to fill the fund back up again for tutoring to offer it for the second half of the year. So, any money there would just be greatly appreciated. And just to let the board know that we will aggressively apply to every single grant that's available. When they come across, we are all over it, and we are writing the grants and submitting them as quickly as we can. This week, we received our ELL money, and it increased significantly from last year, grant money. So we would like to use all of that money for summer programming. But it won't be enough to even begin to cover the needs.
Mr. Lucas?
Thank you, Chairman McGraw. To Ms. Wilson's point, in January is when we typically receive the superintendent's budget for the following school year. So I think many of those things certainly will be addressed in that. And obviously there's going to be a lot of challenges, as was mentioned. The usual sources of funding based on student enrollment that we get from the state may not be as prevalent. So what I kind of like to request as well is when we get that proposed budget, if we can also have a copy of the full current budget, and then for each line item, what we have expended to date. And we typically get that, but not always at the beginning of the year. I just think, this year being very different because of COVID, it would be interesting and beneficial for us and the public to see, what areas we've spent much more in due to COVID. And there'll be some areas that obviously are less because of COVID, but that would be a good thing for, I think, all board members and the public to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Dr. Hill?
So, Ms. McGraw, if I could, Mr. Lucas is forecasting the future because Ms. Acton is going to give a broad overview of our current, Ms. Acton and Ms. Fisher-Davis are going to give a broad overview of our current fiscal 21 budget status and talk about the challenges as well as the areas of savings. So, ask and you shall receive, Mr. Lucas.
All righty. Ms. Acton. I see no other hands. Go right ahead.
Okay, with that, I will move into the overview of our current budget status and a look into fiscal year 22 budget. Our current projection for fiscal year 21 reflects savings of approximately $4.8 million in the operating budget and a deficit of approximately $9.1 million in food and nutrition services. This would result in a reduction in our fund balance of approximately $4.3 million. Included in this projection is the budgeted use of fund balance of $3.2 million, which would also reduce the fund balance. Therefore, the total reduction in fund balance based on this projection for fiscal year 21 would be $7.5 million. The savings of $4.8 million in the fiscal 21 operating budget projection is the net effect of the spending overages and the savings. There are savings in salaries and wages for unfilled positions and in fixed charges such as retirement, Social Security, and health insurance, which is directly related to the salary savings. There are also savings in transportation due to virtual learning and athletics. The spending overages are primarily under plant operations and split in supplies and materials and in equipment. In addition, there are spending overages in contracted services under administration and special education. This forecast is based on our current spending experience and an analysis of our historical costs, but it could change depending on what happens with school reopening. In addition, fixed charges such as health insurance costs and retirement costs are hard to project. As we are preparing our fiscal year 22 budget, we have concerns about the reduction in the state and county revenue based on reduced enrollment of 549.8 full-time equivalents. Unless our revenue budgets remain at last year's level, there would be a $4 million shortfall from the county and $2.7 million from the state. In addition, we have approximately $3 million in mandatory cost increases. If there were no changes to improve the fiscal year 22 revenue budget, there would be a decrease of $9.7 million to the fund balance reserve in order to balance the budget. If our projection for fiscal year 21 and our current estimate for the fiscal year 22 budget holds, our fund balance reserve would be approximately $13.8 million at the end of that. One note that I'd like to make about the fiscal year 22 budget projections that I've just spoken about, we have not yet factored in salary increases into that projection. Are there any questions?
I see Mr. Lucas's hand.
Sure. And thank you for that. Could you give us that in a PowerPoint? I know there's a Word document on Board Docs, but if we had the highlights in a PowerPoint, that would be certainly beneficial for me, I think, for everybody else.
Absolutely, we can do that.
Thank you very much.
Other questions? Okay. Ms. Acton?
Okay, our next item is that the request for intercategory budget changes. The superintendent is requesting an intercategory budget transfer of approximately $1.2 million. It's the actual numbers, $1,191,391. And we're asking for this. We need to move $51,700 from administration to operation of plant for background checks that were mistakenly partially budgeted in human resources instead of fully budgeting in the Office of School Safety and Security. There's also a request to remove $750,000 from instruction salaries and wages, specifically the budget for substitutes, to instruction supplies and materials in the amount of $450,000 and student personnel service of $300,000. The $450,000 change is needed due to the use of proximity learning, which is used to enhance the instructional opportunities, and the $300,000 change is needed to properly align actual positions not budgeted correctly in student personnel service. $389,691, we are asking to move out of instruction, supplies, and materials to fixed charges in the amount of $371,191, and other instructional costs of $18,500. The $371,191 is needed to properly align the Gwynn pre-kindergarten employee benefits associated with the employees at the elementary level, and the $18,500 is needed to properly align fine arts initiatives that were originally budgeted as supplies instead of contracted services. Are there any questions?
Comments at all, Ms. Acton? Guess it's pretty straightforward. Thank you. Oh, Mr. Lucas, excuse me, your hand.
Hi, thank you. Let me get back to the document 1 second. So, under instruction on supplies and material, so you increased it by 450, then you also show a decrease. You said it, but I didn't quite follow it. So you show a decrease of 389 and also that 450 increase.
Yes.
So is that just because was that because something was charged incorrectly?
So it's two different issues. So right. So the 450,000, that's coming out of instruction salaries and wages, and that's where specifically out of substitutes for proximity learning, which was not budgeted in that. It was a decision that was made after the budget. So in order, we need to show it separately so that the county, if you approve it and then the county approves it, they can see where the money is coming from and where it's going. But you're right, there's a net effect there because there's two different items happening there.
Okay, so that's the 450, and then the 389 again?
Yes, the 389,691 is moving out of instruction supplies and materials to fixed charges, the bulk of it, which is the amount of 371,191. And that's for the Gwynn pre-kindergarten employee benefits associated with the employees at the elementary level that was budgeted incorrectly, so we need to put it in the proper category. And then also 18,500, which aligns the fine arts initiatives that were budgeted as supplies instead of contracted services.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Any other comments? Concerns? Nice job, Ms. Acton. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next up is Mr. Schwartz.
Good afternoon. I'm going to present a very brief legislative update. The session hasn't started yet, as you know. It starts in January, and it's going to be a session like no other because it's going to be virtual in many ways, including virtual hearings and testimony and committee meetings. But we do expect the large number of bills that we normally see, and we're going to get the first sense of those bills when the pre-filed bills show up on the General Assembly's website, which should happen in the next week or so. And we'll be able to get a sense from that as to where some of the priorities lay for some of the members of the General Assembly. The first thing we're going to look for when the session starts is whether the General Assembly will be overriding vetoes from last session. Governor Hogan, when he vetoed certain bills, including the Kerwin bill, which is the one we're going to spotlight. And if that bill veto was overridden and the Kerwin bill goes into effect, that also will mean that the Build to Learn Act will go into effect. And so those are the first two bills we're going to have an eye on in the 2021 session. The governor's budget will be introduced early in the session, as it always is. And as you may remember from previous sessions, the General Assembly does not have the authority to add to the governor's budget. So what the governor puts in his budget is really our first look at what we're going to be working on throughout the session and what we may expect in the 2021-2022 school year. You may remember that there was a referendum that was passed in the last election to change the Constitution to allow the General Assembly to add to the governor's budget. That referendum passed, but the change to the Constitution won't take effect until the 2023 session. So for this current session, we're still with the current constitutional provision that the General Assembly cannot add to the governor's budget. So I'll be giving an update at each session, each board meeting moving forward on the session and bills that we've faced. And if you have any questions as the session starts and with any bills you see, feel free to let me know.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Schwartz? Mr. Lucas?
Thank you, Ms. McGraw. Mr. Schwartz, could you comment briefly, I believe it was last month, Prince George's Board of Education voted to adopt public-private partnership for school construction. So could you just give a little background on that?
Sure, and I'll certainly welcome Mr. Andrews, Mr. Heim to jump in if they have any additional information. There was a law that passed several years ago to give Prince George's County Board that authority to adopt school construction projects through a private partnership. The Build to Learn Act is going to allow other school systems to access some additional dollars for school construction. But the way that Prince George's County did it is, in my understanding, is unique, and I don't know if that would carry over to Charles County. And I, again, welcome if Mr. Andrews, Mr. Heim have any additional information about that. And if not, that's I think the understanding I have about it.
So,
Mr. Andrews is ready.
sorry. The Build to Learn provisions did have specific language as it relates to private-public partnerships just for Prince George's County. We in Charles County have talked about private-public partnerships in the past. When I first came here, there were discussions back when Baltimore was first getting started with their 21st Century Schools Commission about that. We've even entertained discussions. Mr. Heim and I have talked to folks even as recent as last year about those opportunities. The problem has been in the past with private-public partnerships, they need a certain threshold. That has been a problem in the past. So usually it's a certain dollar amount that when they go out to their lenders and investors, they need to have a portfolio that shows a certain dollar value of work. And we were not in the position that we needed that much work to make it happen. The last proposal that we had, that we talked to the gentleman last year, was a smaller scale, which was very interesting to us. But in discussions with that individual, when he found out about our average age of our buildings, they were not quite old enough to really justify some of the things they were looking for. Private-public partnership basically is an agreement where a entity entertains and a school system get together and sign an agreement for 20 plus years where the entity does some work, whether it's a renovation or new construction. Usually it's a series of buildings, and then they own and operate for 20 plus years. And the school system basically pays lease payments to that entity for that 20-year term. Then after that time frame, it is available for the school system to purchase. So it helps you that you don't have that upfront cost, but you basically just pay loan payments. But it's not a situation where at the end of the loan payments, you get it for free. You still have to buy it if you want it. So that's just kind of a little bit of a quick history of private-public partnerships, our history with it, and what I am aware of as it pertains to the Build to Learn Act.
So
also keep in mind with the P3s, that time period which you have that agreement with that company, as Mr. Anderson mentioned, usually goes somewhere from maybe 20 to 25 years. And so they're going to end that at that point. And keep in mind, that's the point where you're going to have major systemic replacements are going to come into play. So at that point, the school system's going to be responsible for the roof replacement of the boilers, replacement of the chillers, cooling towers, and so on. So, by design, those P3s are created. So they build the facility for you, but knowing most likely during that time period of that contract with you, they're not going to be making any major systemic replacements to that building.
Okay, thank you. But not to try to go down too much in the weeds now, but I guess my question is that if constructed, that's about choice of words for this, but if put together in the proper fashion, could it be something, based on Mr. Andrews' previous comments, could it be something that as we look into the future that we would look at as an option in Charles County? And just put broad quotes around look at.
It's something that we're definitely going to have to keep in mind is, going back to, earlier when I talked about the CIP and us potentially being held in other school systems, not only Charles County Public Schools, but all school systems being held at that 10-year average, as we anticipate growth because of things that are happening here at the local level, whether it be through the town or the county, and seeing more seat allocations allocated over the next several years. We're going to have to look at alternative funding sources. So we're not opposed to the idea, because it's something that it is new in terms of school systems getting involved in it. And I'm very anxious to see what happens, how that develops with Prince George's County and the partnership that they are entering into. But I'll be honest with you, I am a little bit reluctant to be the guinea pig on that. But it's something that we want to definitely keep open as an option.
All right, I appreciate the candor. Thank you.
And I would just add, we continue to always look at options that are out there. As I mentioned, we talked to a company last year about it. It's encouraging to hear that the scope or size of projects that they're willing to talk about are smaller, which are better for us. I think that the project that is going to be entertained with Prince George's County is somewhere between 6 and 8 schools. And it's a significant chunk of money to cover those 6 or 8 schools. The Baltimore City project that's about 10 years old was $1.1 billion, if I remember correctly, back when that was 10 years ago. So we don't have the need. We will continue to have need for renovation, but we don't have the need that our buildings are at a level that we need 10 buildings all at one time. But we continue to look at options as they come along, and we will continue to look at options.
Okay. Dr. Hill?
And Mrs. McGraw, just to add to this, I think we're thinking creatively, and I appreciate the thought there. But perhaps this is a conversation we could engage county government in also, and instead of just public-private partnership where it's just CCPS and this private company, perhaps if it were county government and the private company and CCPS, because otherwise I feel like we're kind of kicking the can down the road when it comes to actually being able to own and fund these buildings. We are open to looking at options.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Then the next order of business is unfinished business. Do we have any? Okay, seeing no hands, then we'll move on to new business. The first order of new business is continuation of suspension board policies. Mr. Schwartz.
Document on board docs lists the policies that we're still looking to suspend. These are the same policies that we have been suspending all along, and the report from last month is continuing into this month. There aren't any new policies we're adding to this list other than the grading policy we'll talk about in a minute, but the list that's on board docs is the continuation of the same policy suspensions.
Okay, so we can take a vote at this time. We
Correct.
need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second by Wilson.
Okay, it's been moved by Mrs. Abel and seconded by Ms. Wilson to continue the suspension of policies that are on board docs. I would appreciate it if, I'm going to take a roll call vote, and I would appreciate it if you would verbally say your vote. Ms. Abel?
Affirmative.
Ms. Brown? Ms. Battle Lockhart?
Yeah, yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Lucas?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Student opinion?
Affirmative.
And McGraw is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. The next item of new business is the suspension of the grading policy. And can we just, Mr. Schwartz, can we just go right?
Sure, I'll mention that this is a language in policy 5132.2. We're not suspending the whole policy, of course, just the provision dealing with the minimum grades that we talked about earlier in the meeting.
Okay. I need a motion.
Motion to accept the proposed amendment.
Second. I'm sorry, I didn't say who seconded.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to suspend the grading policy for the first quarter. Mrs. Abel.
We need discussion, please.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Please excuse me. Mrs. Abel, I saw your hand.
We don't have anything in writing about what is being proposed.
Okay, so the correct me if I'm wrong. The proposal is to suspend the first quarter grading policy to allow the F to mean 50% during the first quarter. Is that correct? Okay. Discussion. No discussion? Thank you, Mrs. Abel, for correcting me. Mr. Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. Grawl. So, Ms. Holstein, I don't know if you have any numbers, but well, let me preface it by this comment first. You know, this is something that the board looked at. I guess it was about a year and a half ago or so, when it was the practice to not give any lower than a 50%, and we took a vote on that. And there was a lot of discussion because, you know, some kids try and they still don't make it. And I don't know if there's a way to draw a distinction between kids that are trying and still not getting things done. When you have a kid that doesn't log in, when they're able to log in, but don't do anything, it just seems to me that if they're just blowing it off because they can, I just think there needs, if we can, to get some distinction between kids who are legitimately giving it effort, and if they can't get on, that's a completely different story, right? I mean, if they don't have access, that's a completely different story. But I don't know if you have any. You did mention the groups before that were getting those Fs, and I don't know. I just throw that out as discussion for my fellow board members and for you to make any comment.
So the children that have the ability to log in and are still doing poorly, we can't bring, I can't define that as one reason why they're doing poorly. In this current situation, there are multiple reasons why kids can log on and are still not finding success. All the way down to just how kids learn. There are children that just are struggling because much of the instruction is verbal. And so there really is no way to just define as this specific student just doesn't want to do it. But what we need to do is to go ahead and give them the F and give them the 50. But then folks like Crystal Benson and Charmaine Young-Waddy, they are so active with kids that are failing, and that's where the outreach goes, and that's where we're scheduling attendance conferences and putting plans in place for kids, because we have to drill down to why and then support them. And then unfortunately, we all know that there will be children that no matter what we do, that they unfortunately are going to fail this year. But for this first quarter, I really believe that we can't put a blanket statement out there that there are kids who just don't want to. It is just multifaceted, and I understand when we did this before that was really a concern for the board, and that's why you decided not to do that. But this is a different situation, and we're not asking for the policy to be changed. We're just asking for the first quarter, and give us some time to work with these kids.
Thank you. And just so I'm sorry, just to follow up what you said. And so if, as Ms. Holstein said, this would just be for the first quarter, and if we would have to revisit this again, if something similar were to happen or to be considered for the second quarter. Is that true?
Yes, and if that happens, I will have numbers of students for you. I will have numbers of students that failed first quarter and second quarter, even with great amounts of support given to them. But this first quarter, there's too many factors.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I saw Mr. Hurd's hand and then Mr. Hancock.
I would agree with Ms. Holstein and just want to reiterate that I think in principle, it can sound like a good idea to want to draw that distinction, because obviously we only want students who are putting in good faith effort to get the grade. But what concerns me is in practice, I don't think that would be feasible. And I don't think our school system would be able to draw that line. And I think that if we force their hands into having to draw that line, we would leave out a lot of disparity. And when, one example was given, they have the ability to log in, but they don't. That's one technological example of them having the ability, but that doesn't account for at-home experiences and so many other factors that are in the everyday student's life. And that's why I would encourage this board to support this and to rule and err on the side of compassion, at least for first quarter, and giving those students a chance and a hope for a future. and this goes back to the point about mental health, showing our students that we are going to set the example for them, that first quarter might not have gone the way you wanted it to, but you're not done. You've got to get through the next 3, and we're going to make it to the end of this.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. Mr. Hancock and then Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Lucas makes a lot of very good points. I guess, as Ms. Holstein stated, the only problem would be trying to implement that, and Mr. Hurd said the same thing. But I do agree with Mr. Lucas wholeheartedly on what he said. And while I will support this, it's something that I hope I don't want us to do any more than we have to, because ultimately there will be some students that will be given a 50 with no effort. And that's not helping anyone. It's not fair to the students that do try, and it's also not setting our students up for success as adults in the real world. If you don't try, you don't have a job. And so this needs to be done now, I believe, because we are in uncharted waters, and we have made drastic improvements from the first quarter. And so I will go along with supporting this, but I just wanted to say I do agree with the statements that Mr. Lucas made. So thank you.
Mr. Hancock, the point you make is that even with that 50, if the student doesn't try and doesn't give it 110%, they won't pass. So we're just giving them the opportunity to change the course.
Completely understand, completely agree. At the end of the day, though, we are still potentially putting someone who has put zero effort in putting them automatically at the halfway mark, which is a lot to give. It's still a failing grade, but it's still a lot. It's still a lot to give. Again, I will support it, but it's it's a big deal. Thank you.
Ms. Brown, I saw your hand next.
Yeah, I have to agree with Mr. Hurd. As we're about educating children, I think it's up to us to do whatever we can to try to get these kids to be successful. We're not giving them an A or a B. We're giving them simply hope and a chance to bring their grades up.
Thank you. Further discussion? Okay, seeing none. Motion on the floor is to suspend the grading policy for the first quarter to allow the F to mean 50% only during the first quarter. Okay, it was
Madam
moved
Chair.
by Ms. Wilson. Yes, sir.
I guess everyone knows this, but for clarification, an F below a 50. So if you have a 59, it's a 59, right? So thank you.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay, any further comments? Ready for a vote? Okay, Mrs. Abel?
Affirmative.
Mrs. Brown? Mrs. Battle Lockhart?
I agree for a one-shot deal.
Thank you. Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Lucas?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson? Miss Wilson?
Yes.
Student opinion?
Affirmative.
McGraw, yes. The motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda, approval of a multi-year contract for architectural services. I would assume Mr. Heim and Mr. Andretz will be speaking on that behalf.
Sure. So we have two large architectural firms on service to assist us with school design, new school construction, additions, renovations, situations such as Brown Elementary School with the open space enclosure. Those are typically multi-year contracts. We have gotten to the end of the two existing contracts with our two current architectural firms. So planning construction staff had put out an invitation to seek selection for the two new ones for a multi-year contract. P&C went through the process of vetting them, interviewing a number of the architectural firms, and ultimately using a rubric which they had created, rated two of these firms higher than the other ones who interviewed. The two firms which we are recommending to initiate a multi-year contract with are SEI, which is one of the current architectural firms that we've worked with over the last several years. And the second firm that we would like to extend a new contract to is GWO, which is another architectural firm that could ring a bell with some of our members of the board and members of the CCPS staff. They did a large study for us a number of years ago on feasibility of looking at our current facilities and what may need to be done in terms of renovations, potentially closing or replacing existing buildings. So obviously SEI we've been working with over the last several years, and GWO is another architectural firm who worked with in the past. So we feel very confident about the services that these two firms could provide to CCPS over the next several years. Mr. Andrews, anything you'd like to add?
I would just add that these, as Mr. High mentioned, are multi-year contracts. They're structured so initially it's just a first-year contract, and then we have the ability to renew one-year intervals for 4 more years. If we were completely dissatisfied or something not going right, we do not have to renew with those folks, but it does gives us a lot of flexibility in moving quickly on projects, awarding them to firms to get started, to start looking at things. These are predominantly very large projects we'd be talking about. We have several multi-year contracts, and this is the first of several that need to be renewed.
Questions and comments? Mr. Lucas?
What's the cost?
The cost is determined by each project. So there was not a cost to do this. So this was a request for qualifications. We put out advertisement. We got 18 firms that solicited. We went through them and determined which ones we felt were noteworthy that should be interviewed. We interviewed 6 and ultimately are making a suggestion for 2. Those fees that they will collect will be per project that are part of the design fee, the A&E line and a fee out of a CIP project.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Are you asking for a vote at this time? Is that correct, Mr. Heim? Okay. We need a motion.
Motion to accept.
Second by Wilson.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Lucas and seconded by Miss Wilson. Going to Mrs. Discussion.
And if you can make that happen, Madam Chair, I'd be greatly appreciated.
We're going to call you Mrs. Chesney.
Any further discussion? Okay, ready for a vote? The motion is to accept the architectural firms that have been recommended by the search process. Mrs. Abel.
Affirmative.
Ms. Brown.
Affirmative.
Mrs. Battle Lockhart. Mr. Hancock.
Yes.
Mr. Lucas.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Student opinion.
Affirmative.
Mrs. McGraw, affirmative. Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda, future agenda items. Hi, Ms. Wilson and then Mr. Hancock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was hoping that our student board representative would be willing to give a presentation on his the student representative staff. When you sent out when you posted your notes, and I went back and I researched the event for Thursday, I believe, and discovered that you have quite an extensive staff to include a chief of staff, an outreach coordinator, a school safety consultant, a school climate and culture consultant, just to name a few. And I think it would be worthwhile if you were willing and able to do so, to give an overview. And for example, I would be interested, like your outreach coordinator, what planned events do you have in the coming year, or ideas to get students engaged? The school safety consultant, their identification of any safety or risk concerns in the schools. Clarification on positive and negative sources of school culture. Any identifying needs unique to students enrolled in extracurriculum activities. So I think I kind of gave you a good idea of some of the things that I think would be worthwhile to share overall with your fellow board members. And I think it would be very insightful and beneficial.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, and it's something I haven't gone over too extensively in the boardroom. I know I did advertise in the boardroom the application process, and I've alluded to it here and there, but I'd be more than happy to go through the positions, and even if you would like, I can have those staff members come and be there at the presentation, especially if it's a digital one, come January. But if you wouldn't mind, I would also want to plug that, and you referenced future events and year-long events. We always post our events on events.ccboesmob.com. And if you're ever interested, or you're ever wondering, hey, what are we doing? You can always go there, but we'll certainly prepare a presentation if that's the will of the board.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Of the board chair. Consensus of the board to have such a presentation, just raise your hand. Okay. Thank you. I see a consensus. All right. We'll put that as a future agenda item and let you know, Mr. Hurd, what month to be prepared. All right. Mr. Hancock, I saw your hand for a future agenda item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Back to the student board member. Ian had mentioned early on his desire to have a student forum in regards to SROs. I think that's a good idea. As a supporter myself of SROs, I want to know what the students' feelings are, and wherever we can make improvements. If we don't hold the forums, if we don't interact with the students, then we'll never know. So I think that would be a good thing to plan, whether we put it on an agenda or begin the planning phase. I think it's a great idea. So thank you.
You're muted, Ms. McGraw.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a consensus of the board to place that on a future agenda as a future agenda item? Just raise your hand. All right, great. Any other future agenda items? I thought I heard earlier on from Ms. Wilson that you were interested in forming a work group along with HR regarding hiring incentives. Is that my correct?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, because I think it's time to put some of this stuff, at least have a plan, so that we can prioritize based on funding availability. if you don't have a plan, there's not a possibility it's going to happen. And again, I reference there's things that can be done retail, and then there's things that can be done on a wholesale level. And I think these things that are suggested are certainly something that if we put some analysis in, we can get a clearer understanding if it's really doable. And the whole idea is to make things better. We want to retain and recruit the best teachers, and so I think this gives us a heads up with regard to being more competitive with our other school districts. So thank you, Madam Chair, for bringing that back up.
Is there a consensus of the board? Place that on our future agenda item list. Raise your hand, please. I see 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there's a majority. Thank you. Other future agenda items. Okay. Seeing none, at this time, we will take a 10-minute break. We're on time, actually. So it is, actually, it's 4:21. We'll reconvene at 4:30 for our recognition. Welcome back, everyone. And now we are ready for our recognition portion of our board meeting. I'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Jones.
Good evening, Board Chairman McGraw, board members, Dr. Hill, and staff. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the moment that you've been waiting for. The real reason why we're here, why we do what we do. Tonight, we've assembled to recognize a small sample of the greatness we have in the young people we serve. I'm pleased to present to you, albeit virtually, 4 students who have been recognized by their school principals as exemplary student models in the following areas: academic achievement, personal responsibility, and career readiness. Students being recognized this evening are Tamia Smith, 12th grader from Thomas Stone High School; Ryon Venkatesh, 8th grader from General Smallwood Middle School; Michaela Russell, 5th grader from William Diggs Elementary School; and Peyton Smith, 5th grader from J.P. Ryan Elementary School. These outstanding students will be recognized in this order by their school principals, beginning with Ms. Shanice Pearl, principal at Thomas Stone High School. Ms. Pearl.
Tamia Smith is a 12th grade student at Thomas Stone High School and is being recognized in the area of career readiness. Tamia hopes to further her educational prowess by becoming a middle school math or English teacher. She is in the Teacher Academy of Maryland CTE program and is taking the most rigorous courses offered, which includes 3 advanced placement and 13 honor classes, while maintaining a GPA of 3.54. Tamia is involved with numerous extracurricular activities. Throughout her high school years, she has been an active member of our school community. She is the president of Educators Rising, a member of the W.E.B. Du Bois Honor Society, serves as a varsity basketball team manager, and Be the Difference volunteer nominee for her efforts as a volunteer mentor at our feeder middle school, John Hanson, all while fulfilling her responsibilities of maintaining a part-time job at DSW as a sales associate and being actively involved at her church. Tamia's teachers describe her as a highly motivated scholar who is intriguing and has a strong work ethic. Tamia is a focused learner and shares her passion for learning with her peers through her drive and dedication to education. Her peers describe her as intelligent, dependable, very organized, and responsible. Tamia is passionate with her goals and has an action plan to achieve every one of them. She consistently demonstrates leadership qualities and has unlimited potential as she prepares for a future in education. Tamia works hard to maintain honorable status while having a rigorous academic schedule, demonstrating student leadership and participating in extracurricular activities. To date, Tamia has 23 college acceptances, earning over $900,000 in scholarships, and has hopes of attending Morgan State University in the fall. Thomas Stone High School is delighted to recognize Tamia for this award.
All right, thank you, Ms. Farrell, and congratulations to Tamia. Yes, we can give her a round of applause. All right, next we do have Ryon Venkatesh, 8th grader from General Smallwood Middle School, being recognized this evening by his principal, Ms. Brenda Tillotson. Ms. Tillotson.
Good afternoon. I am Brenda Tillotson, the proud principal at General Smallwood Middle School. It is with great bulldog pride that I introduce our choice for exemplary student, Mr. Ryon Venkatesh. Ryon is an 8th grade student and is being recognized in the area of academic achievement. Ryon has maintained a 4.0 GPA throughout his entire school career, consistently placing him on the principal's honor roll. He has been identified to receive gifted services in reading and math since the 2nd grade. Ryon has continued to exceed expectations by scoring in the top 20% of the reading and math PARCC scores for the county. Ryon is very involved in other aspects of school life. He has participated in math counts, National Junior Honor Society, Destination Imagination, soccer club, jazz band, and the school spelling bee. As a member of band, he has been selected to the all-county band for the baritone sax. He not only has been exceptional at the middle school level, but also in his years at elementary. So much so that Gale Bailey Elementary School chose him to return as their commencement speaker at the end of his 6th grade year. If these activities in school wasn't enough, he also participates in an outdoor travel soccer team and plays indoor soccer. He has aspirations of being a professional soccer player. He does, however, have a backup plan in case the soccer thing doesn't work out, which is to be a lawyer. Ryon has always gone above and beyond the school day with extracurricular activities along with his academics. He has often stayed after school to share his passion for learning with teachers and students. His 8th grade social study teacher, Mr. Jamalio, states, Ryon is an extremely motivated individual whose participation in classroom discussion encourages others to be engaged in the lesson. His friendly nature and insight makes virtual learning a little less challenging and a great deal more pleasant. Ryon is an exemplary student who continues to serve as a role model for other students. We are proud of his accomplishment and congratulate him and his parents on this recognition.
All right, thank you very much there, Ms. Tillotson, and congratulations, Ryon. All right. And please now welcome to the virtual microphone the principal from from J.P. Ryan Elementary School. All right, let's go to Diggs Elementary School, Miss Debbie Calvert. Mr. Graves, we're going with Ms. Calvert. Very good. Ms. Calvert, thank you.
I would like to introduce you to Michaela Russell, a 5th grade student at William A. Diggs Elementary School. Michaela is being recognized in the area of personal responsibility. Michaela has been a hawk at Diggs since the 1st grade. Her teachers describe her as a delightful student and a pleasure to have in class. She displays a passion for education and is always ready and eager to learn. This is displayed through the straight A's that she has received on her report card every quarter since the 3rd grade. She credits her success in school to being attentive, organized, and ready for new challenges. Part of her success is due to establishing daily routines, even during virtual learning. She says that setting her alarm every day, even asynchronous days, allows her to get her day started and helps to keep her on schedule. Math is Michaela's favorite subject because she says there is always something new to try. Her I know I can do it attitude allows Michaela to be successful in everything that she does. Michaela is a true leader and role model in the classroom. She strives to be both helpful to teachers and peers. Her classmates often look to her for guidance and support on assignments and during group work. She takes initiative in finding information and displays perseverance in getting the job done right. Since she is usually the first student in class, Michaela's teacher often asks her to make sure that the links and technology being used for the day are working smoothly. She is always willing to lend a helping hand to everyone. Michaela says that when she grows up, she wants to have a job in finance, like her mom, and eventually start her own company. Outside of school, Michaela is busy with many extracurricular activities. She is on a competitive dance team and is the president of a youth auxiliary group in her community. Michaela is an amazing student who has earned the respect of her classmates and teachers. The staff at Diggs is thankful that we have had the opportunity to teach such a well-rounded and exemplary student. I am proud to present to you Ms. Michaela Russell.
Congratulations, Michaela. Thank you, Ms. Calver. Congratulations, Michaela. Well done.
Greetings, I am Dr.
All right, and now we will have the principal from J.P. Ryan Elementary School, Dr. Melinda Johnson. Thank you, Kyle. Dr. Johnson.
Greetings, I am Dr. Melinda Johnson, principal of J.P. Ryan Elementary School, and it is my sincere pleasure to announce Peyton Jones as the recipient of the December Student Board Recognition for Academic Achievement. Peyton is a brilliant young lady with a quiet spirit and sparkling smile. She is in the 5th grade and has attended J.P. Ryan since kindergarten. She is an outstanding student who has demonstrated perseverance throughout virtual learning. During the month of October, Peyton's family experienced a devastating loss. We learned from Peyton's mother that Peyton's father passed away. When reaching out to express our condolences, Mrs. Jones shared that their time was tough, but they appreciated the kindness, patience, and gentle nature of her teacher. Peyton was truly excited when she learned that she would be in Miss Finley's class, and through it all appreciates the many opportunities that puts a smile on her face. Even during a difficult time that will be difficult for most during Q1, Peyton showed diligence in maintaining and completing her academic work and earned all A's. Peyton makes it a point to participate in whole group discussions and is a leader in the virtual classroom. She greets her teacher every morning with a positive attitude and a message in the chat box. Her teacher expresses that Peyton is a pleasure to teach and is so proud of the hard work she puts forth every single day. Peyton's favorite subjects are math and writing. Her extracurricular activities have included gymnastics, dance, and swimming. In her spare time, Peyton authors and illustrates her own books. She is currently working on a book project with her cousin London. Peyton has 3 dogs at home that she adores: Bear Dakota, Eddie Love, and Georgia Rose. She loves animals and would love to adopt all of the dogs in the animal shelter if she could. Peyton is the youngest of 5 children and has an awesome support network of grandparents, aunts, uncles, and other family members who affectionately call her P. Her mom says that P is a very shy kid but loves learning and going to school. You will always see her watching something about the earth and the creatures belonging to it. She aspires to be a lawyer and then the President of the United States. She was very engaged in the election process. She watched the debates and acceptance speeches, asking questions along the way. Despite all the obstacles that life has tried to throw at her, she remains sweet and kind with a positive spirit. The impact of losing her dad is still in process as she was very close to him. She, however, is not letting her sadness distract her from attaining her goal. Peyton was selected to be recognized this month for her endurance and perseverance in uncertain times, academically and socially. Peyton is truly a role model for us all, and we value her and her positive contributions to our school community. She truly embodies our cardinal mantra of flying high by demonstrating honor, integrity, grit, and hope.
And congratulations to Peyton Jones. And Peyton, if you're watching, I apologize if I said your last name wrong. When we first started, I believe it said Smith, so I apologize. Peyton Jones, congratulations. Well done to you, and thank you, Dr. Johnson. But this time, Ms. McGraw, I will turn it back over to you.
All right, well, thank you very much. That certainly was an impressive group of young individuals. Very proud of them. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Ms. Ramona Di Benedetto, who will share with us those staff members that we are celebrating this month. Ms. Benedetto, can I see you?
Thank you, Chairman McGraw. Good evening, Chairman McGraw, Superintendent Dr. Hill, board members, executive staff, colleagues, friends, and family. It is my pleasure to present and introduce our 5 exemplary employees who have demonstrated such a great amount of excellence. Their principal has recorded a video introduction sharing a few words about their outstanding performance. I would like to begin by introducing our first recipient, Mr. Luciano Morales Jr., a special education instructional assistant at Thomas Stone High School.
Mr. Luciano,
represented by Principal Sharif Pearl.
Mr. Luciano Morales is a highly valued member of the Thomaston High School staff who is compassionate about the work he does, which has a positive impact on our school environment and culture. Mr. Morales is a Secondary Academy of International Languages instructional assistant. Our SAIL population has students from Mexico, Central and South America, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic, just to name a few. The cultural differences are often completely unfamiliar to our staff. He has been exemplary, teaching our staff to be sensitive to certain topics and the unique needs of our SAIL students that would otherwise be unknown to them. Here at Thomaston High School, we take pride in building relationships with our students. Mr. Morales involves our SAIL students in teaching us about their culture to make everyone feel at home. He brings a wealth of knowledge and youth outreach and closing the gap to reaching students who are in dire need of the right path. His combination of accountability and caring earns him the respect of each student and family member he encounters. During our closure due to COVID-19, Mr. Morales has continuously made himself available. He volunteered at J.P. Ryan Elementary during last spring to distribute learning packets, as well as being present for all distribution of materials at Thomaston High School, which take place during and after school hours. Mr. Morales' contributions help to ensure equitable access for students who are experiencing limited access to technology and/or the English language. There is no single act of significance that would merit this award for Mr. Morales, as there is too many to count. From translations for students and parents, to other school requests for assistance, advocacy for families, home visits with our PPW, and mentorship with students who are in need of positive role models, Mr. Morales is visible and present for each while assisting in the classroom and in the school community. Thomas Stone is delighted to recognize Mr. Morales for his contributions to our school.
I apologize. Our next recipient is Mr. Trevor Gillum, a computer analyst 3 from General Smallwood Middle School, represented by Principal Brenda Tillotson.
Good afternoon. I am Brenda Tillotson, the proud principal at General Smallwood Middle School. It is with great bulldog pride that I introduce our choice for exemplary employee, Mr. Trevor Gillum. Mr. Gillum works as our computer analyst. As a product of Charles County Public School via Thomas Stone High School, he has worked in the county for the last 15 years. Mr. Gillum is in his 6th year providing his expert services to the staff and students of General Smallwood Middle School. Although he has always done a great job, this past year he has just been phenomenal. We have all had to step up to ensure instruction in the virtual setting, and Mr. Gillum has been no exception. Starting in March of 2020, Mr. Gillum had to begin preparing laptops for both staff and students. Within a 2-month period of time, he prepared over 200 laptops for our students. Along with the Smallwood administration, he assisted in the distribution of these laptops. Since August, he has now prepared another 200 laptops for distribution, and he's now in the process of starting to distribute our one-to-one laptops. Understanding that while doing this, he is only assigned to Smallwood for half the day. The pure volume of student laptops for Smallwood would be enough to keep anyone busy, but he still continues to meet the needs of our staff. Whether it's helping to set up for virtual and hybrid learning, he ensures that he is there to help solve our issues. After working in the afternoon at his other school, he might come back and work another 4 hours here at Smallwood. He does all of this without complaining and with a calm demeanor. Virtual learning has been difficult for so many of our families. I've seen Mr. Gillum meet with our families to try to assist in using the technology. Families will also come in and drop off their laptops, and understanding the urgency, Mr. Gillum has it ready for the next day for pickup. This kind of customer service is outstanding, and he should be commended. General Smallwood would like to thank Mr. Gillum for his hard work and dedication. He has proven himself to be exemplary, and we are very fortunate to have him at Smallwood.
Our next recipient is Ms. Kim Powell, a kindergarten instructional assistant from William A. Diggs Elementary School, represented by Principal Deborah Calvert.
Good afternoon. I am pleased to introduce you to our exemplary employee, Ms. Kim Powell Burks. Ms. Burks started her career in Charles County Public Schools in 2003 at the Judy Center at Dr. Mudd Elementary School. Having a passion for working with young children, she accepted a position as an instructional assistant at Gale Bailey in the fall of 2004. The next year, her career path led her to Dr. Brown, where she began her role as a kindergarten instructional assistant. Ms. Burks became a Hawk in 2009, where she has remained ever since. She is the foundation of the kindergarten team. Energetic and dependable, she keeps the team motivated. Ms. Burks' motto is to have fun while learning. She enjoys creating hands-on, outside-of-the-box activities to help her students learn. Whether she is making up a song using sight words, using the blocks in the hallway to count to 100, or planning an arts and crafts activity for students, Ms. Burks is always searching for ways to engage our youngest learners. In the virtual environment, Ms. Burks has learned to use technology in order to keep learning fun. She participates in daily Zoom lessons and uses Nearpod to increase student interaction. She exudes school spirit and encourages everyone to become involved. Whether she is decorating a pumpkin for the fall book character competition, creating a snowscape for our holiday hallway contest, or turning the Orange Wing into a Dr. Seuss book for Read Across America, the primary hallway is always alive with school spirit that she fuels. Ms. Burks says that she takes pride in helping others in the school and also in her community. She jumps in and helps whenever she sees someone in need. During our materials pickup days, Ms. Burks volunteers to stay and distribute materials every month to our families that extends well past her school day. She enjoys seeing current and former students and loves to engage in conversations with families. Ms. Burks is a true hero for our school and community and most deserving of the exemplary employee recognition. I am proud to present to you Ms. Kim Powell Burks.
Our next recipient is Ms. Donna Rizula, a fifth grade teacher from J.P. Ryan Elementary, represented by Principal Dr. Melinda Johnson.
Greetings, I am Dr. Melinda Johnson, principal of J.P. Ryan Elementary School, and it is my sincere pleasure to announce Mrs. Donna Rizula as the recipient of the December Exemplary Employee for Board Recognition. Mrs. Rizula has been in the 3-year-old program for 14 years, and prior to that, she has subbed for 4 years and was a temp in our life skills room. Her entire school experience has been serving our children in the J.P. Ryan community. J.P. Ryan is very special to Mrs. Rizula, as all 3 of her children went to J.P. Ryan as well as her grandchild. Mrs. Rizula attends and volunteers at many of the school sponsors events at the school, from PTO meetings to classes to build her knowledge to STEM, math, and reading nights. She puts in countless extra hours in each year to make sure the scholars at J.P. Ryan receive opportunities. She has served as an after-school tutor for children to make sure they achieve success. Ms. Rizula continually takes classes, professional development offerings, and workshops to make sure she has the latest knowledge on trends and topics. She brings what she learns back to the classroom to better our scholars. Mrs. Rizula is a goal-oriented employee with an elite growth mindset. She eagerly engaged in the county-wide book study on fostering resilient learners, even though this was not required for instructional assistants. She also completed the Conscious Discipline Professional Development modules to support her role in understanding of scholar behaviors. At the county level, she has spent evenings and summers working to help with enriching the curriculum for our youngest scholars. She takes the initiative to join all of the Thriving Threes meetings and collaborative planning sessions to deepen her understanding and performance in her role in the classroom. In her spare time, Mrs. Rizula has served as the Girl Scout leader in her community and also volunteered her time at the J.C. Hall for bingo. She has a highly effective work ethic and is extremely reliable, efficient, and punctual. She is resourceful, creative, and a true team player. She has taught her lead teacher, Mrs. Colbert, to complete many numerous projects from leftover cereal boxes, toilet paper rolls, and paper towel rolls. Throughout the distance learning process, Mrs. Rizzula's energy has been positive and consistent. She served many hours to help organize and distribute learning packets. Additionally, she is very thorough in following up to ensure our 3-year-olds have individual learning materials prepared and organized. She was caught sitting on the floor in the hallway on packing day, going through each basket to ensure everything was intact. Mrs. Rizzula is an asset to the J.P. Ryan community. We are pleased to have her on our team, and our smiling 3-year-olds are a testament to her dedication and commitment to education. She truly embodies our cardinal mantra and is a role model for all by flying high, demonstrating honor, integrity, grit, and hope.
I would like to make a correction. I announced Ms. Rizzula with the incorrect position. She is actually an instructional assistant of the 3-year-old program. Our last recipient is Miss Wanda Woodland, a state program instructional assistant from FB Gwynn Educational Center, represented by Principal Daphne Burns.
It is with great pride that I recognize Mrs. Wanda Woodland for the remarkable work she does at the Gwynn Center. Ms. Woodland is an instructional assistant in our emotional adjustment program. This year, she works in one of our 3rd grade classrooms. Mrs. Woodland began her career in Charles County Public Schools in 1998 as a substitute teacher. Prior to that, she worked with Head Start at the Gwynn Center. In 2005, she became a full-time employee working as an instructional assistant in the Terrific Threes program, and in 2011, she moved to the Emotional Adjustment Program, formerly known as the STAY program. Wanda's job title is instructional assistant, but she does far more than her job description. She works closely with all staff, especially the other instructional assistants. She helps them with data collection and offers strategies for providing non-academic tasks. She comes in early, stays late, and often comes to the building on days staff can telework. She works tireless to ensure students meet or exceed their behavior goals and make academic progress. Not everyone is cut out to work with students that have different and sometimes challenging needs. It takes that special person with dedication and perseverance to come back every day. I can say without a doubt, Wanda is that special person. She collaborates with classroom teachers to make sure she is always prepared to assist with instructional activities. When she is absent from work, she writes sub-plans so her students can maintain their routine and receive instruction. If the teacher is absent, Ms. Woodland can easily and successfully maintain the classroom alone. She has demonstrated this time and time again. Ms. Woodland is a lifelong learner. Whether it is learning an intervention or a new instructional program, she is eager to learn what is necessary to ensure students are successful. She has an associate's degree in early childhood development and a certificate in patient navigation, and is currently working on a degree in social work. Mrs. Woodland is involved with several outside activities. Among them is an organization called Abby's and Sharing the Wealth Ministries, where they do community meals each month to feed the hungry. Ms. Woodland finds joy helping others. One of her future aspirations is working alongside other community professionals to advocate and provide resources to people that have endured hardship and need another chance in society. I want to thank Wanda for her positive attitude and commitment to the Gwynn Center. She is a role model for staff and students. I am proud to have her on our team.
Congratulations to all of our exemplary employees. At this time, I return the floor to Ms. McGraw. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. DiBenedetto. And once again, along with our students, we have an exceptional group of staff members who certainly have gone above and beyond to help keep our system running. So thank you all very much for your exceptional work. So at this time on our agenda, we would normally have public forum. And this month we have received 4 written comments. We encourage our public to continue to send us your concerns and comments. And you can send them to boardmail@ccpoe.com so that all of us can read them and take action. The next on our agenda is action items. And first will be minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes to approve this evening. The first set of minutes is the board meeting of November the 10th. Okay. I need a motion to approve these minutes.
So moved.
Motion to approve by Isabel.
Sorry.
Okay, I heard Mr. Lucas. Ms. Abel, would you like to second?
Second by Abel.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the meeting. All those in favor, I will call your name. Ms. Abel?
Affirmative.
Ms. Brown? Ms. Battle Lockhart, are you with us? Okay. Mr. Hancock has left. Mr. Lucas?
Yes.
Miss Wilson? Ms. Wilson? Are you okay?
Yes.
Okay. McGraw?
And yes.
Thank you. McGraw is yes.
Student opinion, affirmative.
Thank you. The next set of minutes are those of our work session on November the 23rd. Need a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Abel move. Seconded by Ms. Brown. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. Vote. Ms. Abel?
Affirmative.
Ms. Brown?
Affirmative.
Ms. Brown, you have to. Okay. Mr. Hancock is gone. Ms. Lockhart is gone. Mr. Lucas?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Student opinion?
Affirmative.
And McGraw affirmative. The last set of minutes are those from the legislative breakfast/meeting on November the 30th. I need a motion
So moved.
to accept.
I'm to accept.
And a second by
A second.
okay, it's been seconded by Ms. Brown. Vote. Ms. Abel?
Affirmative.
Ms. Brown?
Affirmative.
Okay, Mr. Lucas?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Student
Yes.
opinion. Okay, student
Affirmative.
and Ms. McGraw, yes. All right. Next action item is to a motion to accept personnel actions that were brought forth during executive session. Do you have a motion?
I move to accept
So moved.
personnel
So moved by
actions.
Ms. Wilson.
Okay, I have Ms. Brown is making the vote. I need a second. Mr. Lucas, do you second? Okay. Okay, vote. Ms. Abel?
Affirmative.
Ms. Brown?
Affirmative.
Mr. Lucas?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. McGraw, yes. The last item on our action items is the approval of the intercategory budget change. Do I have a motion to approve that?
Motion to accept.
Okay, motion is made by Mr. Lucas, a second. by Ms. Brown. Okay, vote, Ms. Abel. Any further
Affirmative.
discussion? Any further discussion before I take that vote? Okay, Ms. Abel, thank you. Ms.
Affirmative.
Brown. Got it. Ms. Brown. Lockhart is going. Hancock is going. Lucas. Mr. Lucas.
Yes.
Miss Wilson.
Yes.
Student opinion.
Affirmative.
And McGraw, yes. Motion carries. At this time, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. I always have a problem when they close this meeting. All right, it's been moved by Ms. Wilson and seconded by Mr. Lucas. Just raise your hand if you're in favor of adjourning the meeting, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And student opinion. Thank you so much. Motion carries, meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much for a very productive meeting today. Happy holidays to everyone.